Well, I was adopted, but my mom and dad, the one who raised me, the ones who adopted me, they passed away in a terrible car accident, and now I'm left with nobody. My siblings don't look at me like a true sibling, they call me the fake one. And then the entire mountain of inheritance battle began. They don't think I deserve anything because I'm not biologically related. Well, I got some news for you. I'm not going down without a fight. Do you ever wonder what life would be like if you weren't born into your current family? I do. It's hard not when your family is bent on making life a living hell for you. I don't think I want to introduce myself or anything like that here, but I'm choosing to rant here because my siblings have isolated me from the real world. I don't have any friends, nor do I have any family that would support me when things are hard. My family's the one who's making life incredibly difficult for me. Let me tell you guys about my life. So, I was adopted by my parents when I was barely a few months old. We don't have any pictures of me during the adoption process or anything, but I know them as my parents from the time I can remember anything. My parents love me a lot, and if it were in their hands, they'd give me an amazing life. Unfortunately, I have 3 other siblings who refuse to accept the fact that I'm part of the family as well. For them, I'm an outsider who does not deserve to be treated like family because I don't share the same blood as them. You see, all my life they've treated me like garbage. The only thing that was keeping me sane enough to survive the dynamic of the family was the fact that my parents pampered me a lot even though I was the middle child. They never made me feel like I wasn't part of the family or that I was different from my siblings just because I did not share the same DNA as them. Mom and Dad made sure to celebrate every single achievement of mine, and they did it with such grace and elegance that nobody could refuse. A lot of the time, even our external family would try to keep me out of family talks because they did not think that I knew the background or something. It hurt a lot to be treated this way, but I knew there was nothing that I could do. My siblings would have been mean to me since I was a kid, and even though one of my sisters is younger than me, she gets more priority within us, 4, than I do. I mean, the other 3 don't even ask me how I'm doing, or how my life is going, or anything like that. Instead, they avoid me like I carry a deadly plague or something. This one time, my parents were out of town for a weekend, so we were living with our grandparents. Since our grandparents were old and tired most of the time, they could not really protect me just to make sure that my siblings didn't treat me badly. When they went to the bed, the 3 would wrap me in a blanket while I was asleep and put me outside on the porch. I was finding out when I woke up shivering due to the cold and realized where I was. Thankfully, they kept the door open, so even though it was late at night, I could still sneak back inside. That morning, when I confronted them about it, they pretended like they didn't know anything about it. It was only when I started getting really aggravated that they told me that they did it as a simple prank, and that I need to calm down so that our grandparents don't find out. Instances like these have been happening all my life. When I was younger, they would gang up against me and force me to do their work. They were still big bullies who have fun making somebody else's life miserable. There was a time when I was so tired of them treating me like crap that I asked them what I did wrong to deserve their treatment. However, their only response was that I got pampered so much by our parents, even though I'm adopted, that somebody had to put me in my place. Since then, I've understood that it's their jealousy talking that makes them act in this nature. I do agree that Mom and Dad pamper me way too much, and it's more than how they pamper my other siblings, but I always thought that it was just because they saw how I was treated like an outcast by my siblings. For me, this was sort of their way to reconcile the family, and to make me feel like somebody in my life actually wanted me. That conversation took a really bad turn when I expressed my opinion on the matter. They could not believe that I told them that they were jealous of me. They didn't take it well, so the week was full of random pranks by all 3 of them. That's how I found out that I need to keep my opinions to myself and not express them to anybody. Things got ugly when I did. The thing that really bothered me about all this was the fact that my parents never took my side. Even when I straight up told them what was happening, they would never discipline the other kids or tell them not to do anything to me. Yeah, once in a while they would glare at them when they were doing something obviously mean in public, but on other days they would just ignore it and call it a regular sibling quarrel. I was really hurt by this fact because I did not want all their extra pampering if it was just going to end up with me being treated like a garbage sack my entire life. Unfortunately, I was stuck being an outsider in my own family. It got too much when I was in high school. Well, they completely just ruined my life, and it's been months since then, and the effects of the pranks are still very visible in my day-to-day. So basically, we're all around the same age, which means that we're close to each other in grades as well. All of us were in high school at the same time, and everyone knew that we four were related. However, it was just the three of them who would hang out all the time and leave me alone. I'm a very big introvert, so I didn't have a lot of friends. Just because I talked too casually in class. There was nothing fun about high school for me, honestly. My siblings made sure that I did not accidentally be associated with them, because that would bring shame for them as a family. Every time that they'd see me sitting alone at lunch or in the hallway, they'd either sneer at me or laugh at me. It was never a look that siblings gave to each other, but I was used to it, so it didn't bother me that much. They were bullies in high school, to put it simple. But they never did it in a way that would make them look like the bad guy. Instead, they just went around telling everybody that I did not fit in the family dynamics, and I was kind of just there to take up space. However, no one in school actually knew that I was adopted. This is because I went to school that had really a few students. So the rumors spread really fast, and on top of that, the students were super judgmental about everything. They had very conservative views and belonged to families who abided by a firm societal structure. I mean, anything that was not normal would be a big deal. It was a very old-fashioned mindset, and I was super tired of it, but I had to accept it. Especially because my own siblings had the same mindset as well. They didn't get tired of reminding me that I did not actually belong with them because I shared different DNA. Anyways, none of it really bothered me as much as I made it show, though my attitude or something, because it was starting to make my siblings mad. They wanted a reaction out of me, and me being nonchalant about the entire thing just ruined the purpose of, quote, bullying me. That's why they came up with something bigger. One day I went to school to find everybody staring at me and whispering to their friends while looking at me. I was confused because even though people did talk about me and my terrible relationship with my siblings, it was never this bad. However, when I went to class and found my seatmate staring at me, I found out that my siblings told everybody that I was adopted. In less than a few hours, the rumor circulated and spread, and everybody knew that I did not share the same DNA as my siblings. That day was probably the hardest day of my high school experience. People started talking about me right to my face, discussing how it made no sense that my siblings treated me so poorly, and that they would react the same way if a outsider came into their family and tried to be equal. Of course, everyone wasn't like this. There were some kids who didn't really care if I was adopted and engaged in conversation with me in the same way they did before this rumor blew over. However, there was a higher percentage of people who did care and weren't too pleased about adoption in general. My classmate in one of my classes asked me if it's true, and it sort of made me lose it. I told them how I've been with my family since I was only a few months old. I basically grew up as part of the family. Just because we don't have the same blood doesn't mean that they're not my family. However, it just backfired when my brother, who was in the same class as me, heard my conversation and assured everybody that there's no way I was part of the family. It was very clear where I stood with them, and the entire school wasn't treating me the best. I spent the entire week running away from the whispers of people in the hall and pointing of fingers only to go home and experience it all over again. At that point, I was so frustrated that I confronted my parents, asked them to contact the adoption agency to either take me back or find my real parents. For some reason, my parents started to panic when I said all of this, and it turned into this big deal. My parents realized how much I was suffering, so they went off on my siblings and started lecturing all of them on their behavior and how they should not be acting this way towards me. But it seemed to make them even angrier. More angry than ever. I saw my siblings turn red as they faced me while Mom was just yelling at the back. I had tears strolling through my face as I tried to control my expressions and not break down really bad right then and there. Well, it still felt like a slap in my face when I did not see an ounce of genuineness in either of my siblings, as my mom tried to make them apologize. I was bent on getting to know my real parent, so I spent a few days trying to sneak into my dad's study to see if there was any files that could lead me to the agency of my parents. However, on my second day of trying to find something, my sister came into the study to see me going through my dad's stuff. Her expression changed from confusion to anger in a second as she realized what I was doing. Honestly, the entire family was still walking on eggshells around each other from the previous fight, and I didn't want to cause another. So when my sister came to drag me out of the study, I retaliated and grabbed her hand to stop her from going anywhere. I tried explaining what I was doing because I wanted to show that I didn't want to stay in the family either if they didn't want me. I thought they'd be happy, but I guess they loved to get me in trouble, because she dragged me to my parents' room and told them what I did. The shock and disappointment on their face is a look that I don't think I'll ever forget. All my life, I've tried my hardest to make my parents proud of me and to never give them a reason to be disappointed in my actions. However, I've done it that day. I'm not sure if I regret it or not, because even though I wanted to be a good daughter and not do anything to hurt them intentionally, I still wanted to know about my real parents and what happened to them. Why was I given up for adoption? Why was I brought into this family if all the children didn't like me? And most importantly, why were my parents hiding everything about my real family? It's not making any sense to me at all. It's been a week since that incident, and my parents are still a bit shocked that I would do something like this. It caused a really big fight between us because I wanted to know my real family and my past, and for some reason they kept hiding it from me, which made me want to know about it even more. It's also the fact that my siblings have started to act mean in high school, even meaner than before. I even had more of a loner in school now, and the gossiping and whispering's just making me mad. It died down a lot compared to the week when I was exposed. Even then, every time I tried to do something in school, people used the fact that I'm adopted as a diss or a comeback, and this one time I accidentally bumped into a guy and made him crack his phone screen just a tiny bit, so small that you couldn't even see it until this was pointed out, yet he still used the "this is why your family left you" as a diss. I don't think people understand how bad these words hurt or how they affect a person. If I felt like an outsider in the family before, it's worse now because now I don't just feel like an outsider to my family, I feel like an outsider to everyone in school as well. It's the thought that everyone knows I'm not biologically a part of the family, and 3/5 people in the family don't even want me there. It's embarrassing and it makes me feel really bad about myself. My parents have tried to calm me down and comfort me by explaining that I feel like a missing piece of the family that came into their lives right there at the perfect time, but I don't know if I believe them. I don't know if I believe anything anymore. Update number 1. Hey guys. It's been a few months since the incident happened. Things were a bit rough for the first month, but it got better after. Everyone in my family forgot what I was about to do, and I agreed to never do it again. I realized that I needed to let go of my past and not let it dictate me. There was a reason that my parents must have abandoned me. I should be grateful that my current parents decided to adopt me and give me a good life. My siblings were still the same, but now my parents were a bit hesitant towards saying anything related to adoption as well. I guess they didn't want to trigger any other episode where I tried to find my real family or whatever, even though I tried to reassure them a lot that I would not do anything like that. They didn't seem to be so sure of it. However, a month ago, my life changed completely. The only people who supported me and treated me like actual human beings, my parents were gone. They were never coming back, and since then my life has been going downhill. We were all in school when we got a call by the principal to go to his office. It was a bit shocking to be called all together, but we didn't expect to hear that our parents passed away in a car crash. Our world shattered when we heard that, and the entire office was full of our cries and wails as we tried making sense of what happened. Even when the teacher was trying to convince us to calm down, it wouldn't work. Our parents were the greatest source of inspiration and happiness for all of us. It wasn't easy to hear that we would never hear their voices again, or that we wouldn't be supported by them verbally in the decisions that we make in the future. For me, it was worse. My parents were the only real family I had. There was no one to support me now but my siblings. They had each other to get through this tough time, and they had each other to rely on. I didn't. Instead, they made sure I felt isolated. Every time they saw me cry, they would remind me that I was crying over fake parents, not real ones. It made me angry, so all of us just kept fighting all the time. Well, things took a turn when my siblings decided to kick me out of the family business. You see, our parents had a good business going, but they did not get the chance to write a will because their death was so sudden. Legally, the business went to their children, but my siblings decided to kick me out of it and tell me I had no place there. I was devastated because I knew that I could do well there. I knew I was meant to take over, and Dad and I talked about it so much as well. It was incredibly selfish of them to keep it to themselves because our parents considered me part of the family just as much as they considered my siblings part of the family. Of course, like always, this caused fights as well. My siblings weren't ready to accept the fact that Dad was looking forward to handling, the business to me, and told me to bug off from the family forever. Now that Mom and Dad weren't here, they had no obligation to keep me and the family apart from the fact that I could legally stay in the house with them. As a formality, I would be part of the family, but in other cases, I was an orphan again. I had no family, yet again. Update number 2. Hey guys, long time no see. It's been around 3 years since my parents passed away. Life has not exactly been easy for me. I previously mentioned how I was only part of the family on papers after their death, right? Well, my siblings did not hesitate to remind me about it every breathing second and every passing hour. Anytime they'd be doing something as a family, I'd be on my own, or most of the time I would not even be invited. Now, in my last year of university, and away from my siblings, I got out of that house as soon as possible, because I didn't want to constantly hear about how I was living in a house that wasn't mine, or forcing myself to be a part of a family I didn't belong to. It was getting tiring listening to all that, so I worked really hard on my college applications, and I got accepted to a university far away from my siblings. Ever since I moved, I haven't talked to either of my siblings properly, and they haven't made the efforts to talk to me either. The only conversations we had were the basic things that siblings needed to have to make sure the other was alive. Even if we hated each other, I guess they wanted to make sure I did not end up like my parents. Also, the fact that part of the inheritance money went to me, and most of the time they tried convincing me to give it to them. All these years, I sat back and watched them spend all their inheritance money like it was water. They had no care about how valuable money was, and because they were all handling the business together, whatever money they generated from there, they'd use it to pay for their expenses and spend the rest of them on luxuries that they could just live without. I didn't see the need to waste so much money on stupid things as much as they did, but hey, I didn't want to interfere. I got a job on my own, and along with my inheritance, I'm making enough money to take care of my rent and expenses. However, this year, I found out that they were basically spending the money on parties, drugs, and gambling. Things like these weren't only ruining their life, but also my parents' hard-earned money. I knew Mom and Dad would have never wished to see their kids end up like this, and because of that, I decided to text my siblings and tell them that they need to get their act together. I know I had no business doing that because we weren't close or even siblings at this point, but I did not want my parents' money to be wasted. However, they told me to stay out of the family dynamics and issues and mind my own damn business. Not just that, they also said some really mean stuff to me about being adopted that took me back to how they treated me when we were kids. Thinking about everything they've put me through, and also being influenced by so much media content I consume these days about the adoption process and finding real families, I decided to track my luck once again. When my parents passed away and my siblings treated me like crap, I went into my dad's study again, and I found a file about an adoption center. It didn't say my name or anything like that, but considering I was the one adopted, it must be mine. After an exhausting conversation with my siblings, I decided to go to the adoption center to get more information about my past and why I was abandoned by my biological family. However, once I got there and asked for my information, I found that I wasn't in their records. My parents never adopted me from this place. If not, then why did they have that file in their study? I'm confused right now, but I'm going to continue looking in hopes that someday I find my real family. Update number 3. Buckle up. Hey guys, it's been another year. I finished college and I got my degree, and now I have a good, reputable job that pays me well. However, in all those months, I could not find my family, my real family. I'd been searching for them for a year, and there was absolutely no clue about it. I went through every corner of my dad's study. I asked relatives, I asked my siblings, but nobody knew where I was adopted from. At this point, I was ready to give up and just let it be. I was ready to accept the fact that I would never know my real parents, and I was stuck with my siblings that hated me for even existing. I was mentally ready to accept it, until somebody suggested I do a DNA test to find out my genetics and my real family. I felt like such an idiot for not realizing sooner that something like this existed, and that I did not need to work so hard for the entire year to just find where I was adopted from. At one point, I was convinced that somebody had just dropped me in front of my parents' door and they decided to keep me. It would explain so much about why I could not find out about my bio parents. But guys, that was not the case. That was not the case at all. In fact, it was the exact opposite. Are you ready for this? Let me explain. So, I got the DNA test done a few weeks ago and I got my results. I opened them a few hours ago, but ever since then I've just been sitting here in shock. Well, initially I got it done months ago as well, but I did not think they were true and there must have been a mistake of some sort. So I got it done again. But this time, same results. Now, it was for sure. There was no mistake. I was the biological daughter of my parents, and my 3 siblings were adopted. Let me tell you how I figured out that my siblings were the ones adopted. After I got the results the first time, I went back to the adoption center to find the connection my parents had with it, if it weren't through me. That's how I found out that all 3 of my siblings were adopted from that place. Yes, you read that right. I wasn't the one who was adopted. The years of torture and bullying that I went through were all for nothing because I wasn't the outsider of the family, they were. I'm not sure why my parents twisted the narrative around though, but whatever the reasoning may have been, it had made my life hell for all those years. When the first test came back, I spent more than a week trying to find out the reason for this deception. They would not have done this for no reason, but now that they weren't here with us, I could not find out the reason. Since there was no explanation, I was a bit hesitant to accept the results, and this is why I sent my DNA for the second testing. Right now, I'm just sitting in shock because I can't believe this is happening. The anger that's rising inside of me is insane because I went through so much all these years, only to find out that the ones who, should have been bullied were my siblings and not me. They ruined my life for no reason, and they were going to pay for it. However, I needed a proper plan for it. I wanted them to feel the helpless of their life going downhill as you try gluing the pieces back together only for them to fall back down again. I know the perfect way to do it. Final update. My revenge plan was a success. Let me walk you through it. My siblings are in shock and trying to piece their life together so they don't lose control of it. Meanwhile, I'm enjoying every single second of it. This inner peace that it's giving me is incomparable to anything else because they're now going through the same feeling of helplessness that I went through all my life because of them. To give you guys a bit of context on my revenge, I took the most valuable things that they owed. all the ancestral properties of our family, basically everything since I was a little kid. I kept hearing about how my dad's family owned so many properties, and since he was an only child, all the properties went to him, and after grandfather died, this meant that after his death, all of them would go to us. Well, I knew my siblings would never want to give me the property, so I had to take it by force. I filed a court case right there against my siblings for taking over the property since they belonged to the biological child. There were several reasons why I was so confident about winning the case. Well, I'd say the first and most important one was that all of them had sent me a text telling me how I could not get any share of the property since they belonged to biological children and were in connection to their lineage and bloodline, not knowing that this would come back to bite them in the butt since they were not the biological child I was, which meant that I had the right to take full control over everything. The second thing was that they were forced to get DNA testing. After I gave the proof of adoption by providing them with the documents, they were also forced to get a test done just to ensure that the documents were indeed correct. Of course, the results came out in my favor and they weren't biologically related at all to my parents. Third, ever since I found out about this entire situation, I contacted my grandmother and told her about the results and what I found out. Of course, I wasn't really close to her, but even though she failed to protect me from my siblings when we were young, she did not mean to intentionally harm me either. However, after hearing everything that my siblings have put me through and the results of the DNA test, she agreed to be a witness in my court case. She was the one who announced that these properties were part of the bloodline, and it was a tradition to only give them to the bio-child. All of this evidence and acts combined together made my case really strong. That's how I won. The shock of my siblings' faces is something that I'm not going to forget any time soon. It was so satisfactory to see them go through the same thing that I did, but not just that. The only thing they were most excited to take control over was now mine, and there's nothing that they could do about it. It's exactly like Mom once said. Karma really runs around in a circle. I'll just be honest with you guys. Besides the fact of arguing about being biologically related or not, I mean, you would think that after all these years of being forced to live in the same household, after all these years of attending the same school, possibly hanging out with the same friend group, you would think eventually these siblings would learn, hey, maybe OP isn't really as big of a threat that we think she is. There's no reason for us to be jealous about this. But I do want to know your thought on this story because OP had a tough time growing up, and it was no thanks to OP's siblings. I'm a 59-year-old male. My wife is no longer with us, and we had 5 kids together. I am putting those 5 kids for my inheritance in the will. However, for 2 of those children, I've decided to not give the money to them up front when I pass away. It's going to go into some sort of plan so they can access it over the years. Well, they're extremely not happy about this once they found out the other 3 children get the money right away. But let me explain to you exactly why I did this. My now deceased ex-wife and I have 5 children together. 21 female, 24 female, 28 male, 30 male, and 35 male. A few years ago, their mother passed away and left each of them a very large inheritance, over $300,000 each, evenly distributed amongst them. Prior to her passing, she made it clear to them that this money was not to be wasted. It was to 1, pay off debt, 2, use to further education, and 3, put towards buying a house in the future. 2 of my children, 24 female and 28 male, have completely squandered this money in just a couple of years. My daughter spent it all traveling across the world, living this carefree style, living in these nice hotels and eating fancy dinners. I completely understand going on a vacation, but to blow all of it on travel against her mother's wishes? Well, that's bloody shameful. My son, though, oh man, he's even worse. He's literally spent it all on drugs, alcohol, even escorts, all over time. None going towards self-improvement as their mother wanted. So I continued to hound them over this time and time again until As expected, it's all bloody wasted. Once this happened, I decided to cut both of them out of my will, as I don't want my hard-earned money being squandered so my children can live this hedonistic lifestyle for a couple of years. I told this to their siblings in confidence so that they would be prepared to deal with the fallout when I eventually pass away. One of them, not sure who, let it slip to them, and now they've gone off the deep end and proclaimed that I'm, quote, dead to them, and they don't have a dad, blah blah blah. I don't want to go into some long, bitter feud with my kids, but dang if I'm going to have my life wasted by them also. Any advice on how to fix this? I just don't want my savings wasted. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. So today's story we're looking at first is going to be this family drama. Just so you know, there is an update that came out 5 days after the original post. If you're new to the channel, I hope that you guys are enjoying the story so far, and if you want more daily stories of similar topics, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Here is update number 1. So, I took the advice of the previous thread, which was overwhelmingly to consider setting up a trust for my 2 problem children. Before I even invited the 2 of them over to talk the issue, my son called me to apologize for how he was acting. He seemed genuinely ashamed of things he said, and admitted that it was wrong of him to waste his mother's savings like that. Anyways, I invited the 2 of them over to tell them my plans. As I say, my son seemed very apologetic, while my daughter was clearly still upset with me. I told them that I would reinstate their inheritance, but since they've demonstrated extremely poor money management, that I will only do so through a trust fund. That I'd talk with a proper lawyer or financial expert on setting it up, and they'd be designed to provide for them and any future children they have over many years after I'm gone. That them blowing through it in a few years is simply not an option. Well, the son took the news very well and said he would not trust himself with that money anyways. I'm not sure what caused such a sudden change of heart in my son, but as I say, it seemed genuine. He also offered to go to therapy for his drug addiction if I helped pay for it, to which I agreed. I'll make sure this therapist actually exists, don't worry. My daughter, though, oh boy, she did not take it well. Far worse than I've expected. Here, I'm willing to give them a second chance, and she just blows up about how it's not fair that it's only them that don't get the money outright. I explained that their siblings have already demonstrated they were responsible with money, and hence why I'd leave it to them outright. Nope, not good enough for her. She doubles down that spending all of her mother's $300,000 on travel was justified, and she had the gall to again call me several extremely upsetting names and accuse me of being emotionally abusive. Yeah. So I told my daughter that I'm retiring soon. Perhaps I should experience the joys of travel also. Perhaps I should spend her inheritance that I've worked for my entire life on travel myself. At that point, she stormed out and hasn't contacted me since. I'm just really proud of how my son's taking the news. Extremely disappointed with my daughter. Genuinely considering spending, quote, her part of the inheritance on travel myself at this point. Let me know what you guys think. Alright, so you heard the story. Let me know your thoughts about it. And right now, I'll read a similar situation comment from the comment section. It says this. About a year ago, before he died, my dad decided he wanted to sell his house and go into an assisted living. The place he chose was really nice, the kind of place you'd want to live out your final days. But he was hesitant to do so because he didn't want to, in his words, spend his kids' inheritance. My siblings and I totally disagreed. I told him that living the life he deserved was exactly how we wanted to spend the money. As it turned out, he died after 6 months, and he did leave us an inheritance. But the knowledge that he spent his final days in a place that he loved, to us, that was worth more than anything. So guys, let me know your opinions on this story. If you've ever had anything similar to this, and you want to share your experience, drop it down below. we still have 2 more stories to cover in today's video. The next story is titled this: OP exposed his family to a toxic cancer-causing element while running his home. 2 weekends ago, me and my wife decided it was time to replace our falling apart laminate floors. The location of the laminate we were replacing was in the kitchen, dining room, family room, living room, and main hallway. I don't know, we thought it would be nice to have all the rooms including the kitchen and dining room all on one floor. So, we ripped up all the old click laminate in the hallways and family room, and we found original 1970s vinyl underneath it. Since we planned on laying the floating floors again, we decided to leave it alone. We proceeded to chip up all the tile in the kitchen, making our way to the dining room. We got the tile up in the kitchen and we were left with an absolute mess of thin set. So I googled the easiest way to get up the thin set. I found a video on YouTube showing how to use a grinder with a shop vac attachment and diamond grinding wheel. I went to town and it worked, and I treated a lot, and I was super proud of how well it came out. Here's where my story goes south. 2 days later, my dad came over to check the progress we made. I was showing him the kitchen, explaining the process I used to quickly and take the thin set off. My father proceeded to look at the floor and asked what was the material on it. I said it's concrete. It appeared to be anyways. He said, no it's not. He proceeded to grab a utility knife and cut a small square of material off the floor where I've ground down the thin set. It was a paper-like material that was brittle. He said it looked to be paper backing that came with the old vinyl sheet flooring. He looked over the family room, saw the old sheet flooring, and told me that I needed to get out of the house and get the materials tested. So I packed up the wife and kids and headed to my parents' house for the weekend. Yesterday, the testing company came out and took samples from all over the house. Today we received the results. Both the vinyl in the family room, etc., and the paper that was below the thin set tested positive for asbestos. The paper stuff below the thin set tested positive for 15% white crystalline asbestos. The story gets worse. I test ground a spot on Wednesday night and did a little bit more on Thursday night. We live in southern Florida and we ran the AC overnight both nights. I then continued to finish the job on Friday. The AC was off all day Friday because I pulverized the asbestos into a fine powder. Literally the absolute worst thing you can do. And even though I was running the shop vac pulling up the material as I went, it didn't have a HEPA filter and just had a regular collection bag, so therefore the asbestos, through the help of my AC, was contaminating the entire house. I exposed my family to a very toxic, cancer-causing element and effectively ruined my home because I didn't know what I was doing. Something so innocent as to just wanting to lay floors has turned into an absolute nightmare. I consider myself lucky, because if it wasn't for my father, we would have just continued to lay the floor and just cleaned up the mess and never had a second thought about it, just lived in it. The one thing I don't understand is why there isn't more awareness about this type of stuff. Like, seriously, there should be freaking commercials, Super Bowl commercials, warnings at Home Depot, pamphlets, something. Heck, even the guy at the freaking flooring store could have said something. Hey, go ahead, buddy, and make sure you check what's underneath your old floors before you lay the new one. I asked the asbestos tester that, based on her experience, was it common for homeowners to do exactly what I did and never know about it? She said, probably about 90% of people who do do-it-yourself work don't test and do not know what they even have contaminated their home or not. She told me that some contractors are even worse because they do so many homes. They're often working with unskilled labor that doesn't know or don't care and just rip it up, contaminating the area and leave. Anyways, sorry for the wall of text, but I literally feel sick about what's happened. We have no access to anything in the home, and we'll likely have to trash the clothing, sheets, and basically any fabrics in the home. We're in the position where we can afford to fix this problem, but honestly, it's clearing us out. Let my mistake be a lesson to you all. Stay safe, guys. Update number 1. Well, it was bad. As bad as I thought it would be. I received 4 quotes for the decontamination and removal of the rest of the asbestos containing floors, which range from $17,000 all the way up to $38,000. All contractors I spoke with told me essentially the same thing, that all this porous materials had to be disposed of, and that my fiberglass AC duct also has to go. The contractor went up with ending of the cost of $22,000 and another $6,800 for the ceiling repairs and refinishing. So here I am, a month and a half into this nightmare, and we just had our clearance testing done. 2 air samples out of 9 failed. The concentration for the worst one was up to 340 SCC, and at the other 140. This was after a negative air machine was running 24 hours a day for weeks. And after the cleaning of every hard surface, my contractor told me that in 24 years he's never failed any clearance air sample test. He also said this was the first time he's ever seen someone grind the material. He's heard of it, just never seen it. But this is just going to show how high the concentration of asbestos was in the air when I originally ground the material. So, the second round of cleaning and air filtration is happening right now as I write this. All in all, we lost all our couches, mattresses, clothing, towels, sheets, pretty much anything that had fabric on it. The ceilings had to be trenched in order to pull the AC ductwork out without contaminating the attic, as well as my air handler having to be completely disassembled and cleaned. All of this happened because I didn't know what I was doing. Had I just chipped up some of the tiles and recognized what was under the thin set, I would have never ground it up, but I didn't know what I was looking at. Luckily, my father did. I can't stress this enough. If you're in an old house, and if you're going to be performing your own demolition work on anything that could even remotely contain asbestos, vinyl floors, mastic, popcorn, joint compound, really old insulation, siding, etc., spend the $20 on a do-it-yourself test kit and wait a week for the result. I can't stress enough how much of a pain in the butt it is to get rid of asbestos once it's in the air. $50 and 1 week delay to your project is a heck of a lot cheaper, and well, safer than what I'm going through right now. Also, if it is asbestos, go online, get disposable Tyvek suits and respirators P100. Be safe! A one-time hit of asbestos isn't the worst, but it sure as crap isn't good. Be careful with that stuff. Wow, could you imagine being in that situation, putting your family at risk because you want to start sand dusting stuff? Anyways, here's the top comment. It says this: to make matters even more fun, odds are high that at some point some of the paint in the house has lead in it. Lead paint was banned 1 year after asbestos in the States. Test for lead and asbestos before any home improvement project, folks. It's cheap, easy, and will save your life and your children's. Unless your building was built after 1980. If someone has done work since then and it looks like a renovated area, you should definitely check it out. So that's some good advice, guys. Let me know if you've ever had a mold problem or run into something similar to this story. Now, it's time for our final story of the day. The title for that is, Am I the A-hole for not stating why certain members of my family were not invited to my wedding? Recently, my boyfriend and I of 4 years got married. I come from a very traditional, if not stereotypical, Latino family. The gossip is deeply ingrained in the whole family. I have about 7 uncles, which of one is also bisexual like myself. He got married some time ago, and he sent out invitations to the whole family. A large majority of them declined because of, quote, religious reasons, which really saddened him. I kept this in mind when it came time to send out my invitations, and those particular family members, well, they didn't get one. About a week ago, my husband and I went to my dad's house for the annual family reunion. I just really didn't want to go because I knew in the back of my mind this was absolutely going to get around. Despite the lack of posting on any social media, but my dad and mom really wanted me there. They're very supportive and the quote, be loud, be proud type people, and I love them to death for it, even if it's a little obnoxious. I voiced this concern to my father, and he was very insistent that if it goes south, he'll be right there to laugh about it with me. The entire time, my husband and I were getting some intense side eyes. The family that did not attend didn't even try to hide the fact that they were whispering about my husband and I. About 2 hours later, I'm 6 or so Jack and Cokes in. The straight uncle took initiative and decided to quote ambush me and ask why they weren't invited. I was polite and reminded them that they turned down the bi uncle's wedding for the religious reasons. They responded with at least wanting to be thought about and being invited. I told them that I did think about them and decided they weren't worth the 57-cent stamp to be told they weren't going to attend for bigoted reasons. It would be understanding to say that the reaction was less than pleased. Crap hit multiple fans. My uncles went off for being compared to a postage stamp. My dad was eating it up. My mom was a little mad at me for causing a disturbance in her home, though, which unfortunately made me question everything at the moment. My grandmother was giving me the judges in Spanish look. My husband kind of grabbed my hand and said, let's get out of here before you make anyone else mad, in a laughing manner, and proceeded to drive us home. My dad sent me a, that's my boy, good on you for standing up for yourself text. My mom was still less thrilled about how things went down. My bi uncle sent me a text saying, thank you for standing up for me, but now my relationship with my brother is strained to heck, and I didn't want that. My phone and social media have absolutely been blowing the heck up ever since, but I'm kind of ignoring it. But I do feel bad for my uncle because he just wants to be close with all his brothers and not just one. So, am I the a-hole for how things went down? What's up guys, Mr. Reddito here. So I found the update for this post, but it's an interesting one. The update is basically saying, hey, my family members found my original post, and this is how they reacted. So we're going to jump into that now. I hope you guys are having a great day. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button, and let's see what's going on with the opinions of the family members. Well, as I guessed, family did indeed find this. Between 7 uncles, one of my cousins likely shown them the post that I made. It was obviously not received well, LOL. Anyways, I'm just going to go down the list in order of things and events that happened. My dad. First off, he wanted me to tell all you he loved all the support, and he wishes Dad all of you as well. His words were this exactly. It took 2 of us to make you, and I gotta say I love my work. Any parent that doesn't should never have tried. My mom says this. She called me asking why I brought up the event of my uncle's wedding, and I told her that I was simply having a good time with my husband and everybody else. That my uncles made the conscious decision to want to start a problem. She got mad at me and said she just wanted to have a good party. I told her that I didn't want to be attacked for my sexuality and not inviting blatant bigots to my wedding, but that I'm glad her party meant more. We got into a shouting match over the phone, and I told my father what happened, and he's livid with her. They got into a fight, and now she's staying at my grandmother's. I've apologized profusely to my dad, but he's telling me to let it go and that I've done nothing wrong. Above all else, this is what hurts the most. She was always so very supportive of me, and it feels like a massive bombshell was just dropped somewhere. My bi uncle. Unbeknownst to me, my husband invited him over so he and I could have a heart-to-heart about what happened. I mean, it annoyed me a little, but I'm glad he did invite him over. We talked about the post I made, and he saw everyone's comments. According to him, it kind of opened him up, that crap he was just ignoring, so he could pretend to have a close bond with all his brothers. At the same time, he's still not sure what to do from here. We talked for a few hours, had a good old cry hug, and everything's good on the front, and it makes me happy. He'll be seeking therapy to help him deal with his feelings on this. Now, time for the other uncles. Obviously, they're livid with me. They could not believe that I would post something that was blasting them on the interwebs. They said they didn't like being painted the way I posted them, so I just straight up asked them if they thought my bi-uncle was going to hell because of his marriage. To my shock, they had absolutely no problem saying yes. They didn't even try to dance around the subject. In the end, I told them if they didn't want to be painted as bigots, to lose the religious bigoted act, plain and simple. My husband has been nonstop trying to comfort me after shouting matches with my mother. He can see the immense pain that I am, and I love that man so much. He took me out for steak and old fashions the other night just to help me get a little relaxed. Well, anyways, that's it now. I just hope everyone has a great night. Thanks all. So basically, the comment section of this one was just a lot of people supporting OP. Here's one of the top ones. Stick with the people who clearly support you. Your dad and husband are wonderful. And the fact that your uncle is willing to sit and have a mature conversation with you shows that he's worth having around as well. Your mother, though, seems to have the performative, quote, "I'll support this until it's not inconvenient for me to do so" attitude, and I hope she sees the light soon. Well, duck everybody else. Guys, let me know your thoughts about this story, or if anything in your family household or immediate family or far away family or neighbors or friends have ever gone through something like this. My half-brother is coming at my neck for my inheritance, but hey, he doesn't have any claim, any right to it, but you will not believe when my stepfather sides with him. I'm telling you, this is crazy, but I have a trick up my sleeve they weren't ready for. I'm 34 and female. I'm the only child from my mother's first marriage with my father. My mother and father had a really messy divorce when I was 4, and my mother remarried my stepfather very soon after. I haven't heard from my father since I was 10 years of age, and I've made no effort to contact him since. I have one brother who resulted from my mother's second marriage to my stepfather. He's 25 and we aren't very close. My mother passed away 10 years ago to breast cancer. It was really hard on my brother as he was only 15 when this happened. My stepfather suffered a lot afterwards too, and I also had to become the breadwinner for the family for 3 months before he was able to pull himself together and go back to work. I'm very close with my stepfather and I love him a lot. But he's always drawn a line between us. He loves me too and is very vocal about it, very affectionate, but he's always made sure that I know that he is not my father. This hurt a lot when I was younger, but I've moved past it now as an adult. When my mother died, she had about $50,000 in savings. That was split between my brother and me. He was only 15, so the money was put away so that he could access it when he was 18. But I used mine to pay off my student loans right away. Once my brother turned 18, he pretty much wasted all his money away before he even went to college. So now he's in considerable amount of debt, and I'm debt-free and have a good job. A week ago, I received a call from a lawyer. My biological father died, and as I was with his only child, his assets would be given all to me. Guys, he had over $1 million in assets, all of which were sold upon his request after he died. I now know that I'm really, really rich, with no idea what to do with all of it. I'm in a lot of emotional turmoil at the moment, just because I hadn't even known my father was sick and his death came very suddenly. I have to mourn him without really having to know him. And now I have all this death money, and I feel like I should have done something noble with it, like donate it to breast cancer charity for Mom. But I also want to just live my best life. I have no debts to pay, and I'm good with money. I could invest this and make it last my entire life. When I first got the news, I did what anyone would do when they suddenly have millions of dollars. I went on the biggest night out with my friends I could think of. I flew us all out to Vegas, and we went crazy for a few days. Now, I'm back home and I haven't even spent a chunk of my inheritance. If all that isn't enough, as well as the money, my dad wrote me a letter that would be delivered in the event of his death. I just got it in the mail yesterday, and he revealed some things about my mom that I had no idea about. Mom always spun the divorce idea between her and Dad as some sort of mutual separation and made it all seem very calm. But she always told me that it was my father who decided that he did not want to see me anymore. I would see him sporadically throughout my childhood. He'd show up every second birthday and sit in a corner moodily. Then he would give me a big expensive present while glaring at my mother and stepdad. I never paid much attention to him as a kid. He was just a guy who brought gifts, and when I was a teenager, I started to struggle with abandonment issues. As any teen girl would without a father, right? My mom sat me down and told me that it's not my fault, that my father was just not a good man, and that I was better off without him anyways. Well, I believed all this up until now when I got my dad's letter. Apparently, he had not wanted the divorce at all. It was less than mutual. According to my dad, he was head over heels in love with Mother, willing to do anything for her. He agreed to be a stay-at-home father so that she could work when she began struggling with postpartum depression. Once my mom went back to work, she met my stepfather. Apparently, he was her manager at the company she worked at, and they hit it off right away. In the letter my dad sent, he said that my mom began to have an affair with my stepfather behind his back when I was 2 years old. So, he would be at home, taking care of me and tending the house, while she would be having, quote, business meetings with her boss in a motel every weekend. Eventually, my dad found out and told my mom that she had to stop her affair or he'd leave her. He says that he was hoping that she'd come to her senses and break things off with my stepdad, but she did not. She left my dad in a heartbeat and married my stepfather the next year. My dad said that he tried to get custody of me, but the courts have a bias towards mothers, so I ended up in my mom and stepdad's care. My dad tried to get visitation, but my mom blocked him as much as she could, and that's why he could only show up at birthdays. Apparently, Dad never loved another woman, and that's the reason he never had any more kids. He died with a broken heart, if the letter is to be believed. Listen, I'm taking this all with a grain of salt, I know. I've heard my mom's side of the story all my life, now I'm hearing my father's. I have no doubt that both parties are embellishing things, leaving things out and editing the narrative to make themselves seem more sympathetic. It's just that, until now, I'd never even heard my father's side. And that's why it's throwing me for an absolute loop. I asked my stepdad if it was true that my mom and he had been having an affair behind my dad's back, and he got all moody and sullen. But finally he admitted it was the truth. I was upset enough, honestly. My childhood was being turned upside down on itself. Everything I believed about my parents, relationships, and divorce proved to be untrue. It was then, though, that my little brother decided to get involved. He called me up the other night, trying to be casual, but I knew he had something on his mind. He barely ever calls me, and we usually text once or twice a month, and he had this crappy tone in his voice. He asked me about work, how I was doing. But when I finally snapped at him and told him to cut to the chase, he blurted out that I should give him half of my inheritance. I didn't even know what to say. I hadn't even told him about my dad's death or the money. The only person I told was my stepdad. But clearly, he'd gone running to my brother to tell him. I should have known better than to talk to my stepdad about it. He's always just some sort of pushover when it comes to my little brother. But I just wanted to get to the bottom of the situation and sort out my thoughts. I laughed at first. I really thought he was joking, but he wasn't. He got all ratty with me when I laughed and told me that it isn't fair that I get so much money, especially when he's the one who's in debt and unemployed, when I have a well-paying job. I was in awe at the audacity of this kid. Really? Who did he think he was? I said as much and he started crying. He was making these fake sobbing noises, wailing that he was in so much trouble. He owed so much money, but I wasn't buying it. The waterworks might work on my stepfather, but they don't on me. I've watched this kid grow up into the spoiled, entitled brat that he is. Once he realized that the tears weren't going to cut it, he changed tactics. He started yelling at me, really bellowing over the phone, telling me that I was a selfish jerk, saying really, really nasty, horrible things. He said it's no wonder my dad abandoned me, and that he understood how my mom would leave my dad if he was anything like me. This didn't get to me either, honestly. I was just sitting on my couch with my phone at my arm's length while he screamed at me. He clearly had not got the full story from his dad if he was bringing up my dad abandoning me. I'd like to say that he would not have the audacity to speak to me that way if he'd known that his father was the reason my parents broke up. That I was left without a father for my entire life, but I think that would be expecting too much of him, right? Well, he was grasping at the end of the phone call, out of breath after his tirade, and I was just in shock. Yeah, I mean, we've never been close, but he's still my brother. Never until now have I thought of him as my half-brother. He was never anything but my little bro. But now I'm really reevaluating that, and I knew he was spoiled, and I knew he liked to push his dad around, but I never thought that he'd have the nerve to try it on me. I guess I've always given him a pass for being emotionally stunted and immature, because he was still a kid when Mom died. But honestly, he has some balls to speak to me like that. When Mom died, my stepdad was in bed for months, and I had to be the one to take care of everything. I paid the bills, I drove my brother to school, I cleaned the house, I brought my stepdad his meals 3 times a day, and took them back untouched and after a few hours. I washed this kid's gym socks, and he has the audacity to cop an attitude with me, now not sharing something he has no claim to? Yeah, I'm done with him. I feel betrayed by my stepfather also for running and telling my brother my business as soon as he heard it, like it was a fresh gossip off the press, rather than real and actual real emotional turmoil I was going through. But I shouldn't be surprised. Even before Mom died, my brother has walked all over his father and gotten whatever he wanted. I'm pretty sure my stepdad still pays his bills for him, and I know for a fact he does his laundry. This has just made it clear that those two are their own separate family, and I'm on my own now, to be honest. I'm going to call my stepfather tomorrow and talk to him about this. I doubt he's even on board with the crazy plan. He's soft to my brother's face, but he's always working behind the scenes to offset all his crazy ideas. I'm going to ask him how I should deal with this. There's no part of me that wants to share my dad's money with my brother. I think he met my dad maybe 3 times in his entire life. Well, the thing is, if my brother had asked for a loan, I would have given it to him without a second thought. I would have even paid off his debt and his student loans without even expecting him to pay me back. Heck, I was half considering it before he even called me. But now he's not getting a dime. He's greedy, and he flew too close to the sun, and now he's paying for it. I honestly don't even think I'm the a-hole in this situation, but I know that people here are super active, so I thought I'd put a post up, just getting everything off my chest. I've talked to my friends about it, obviously, but I need the opinion of unbiased strangers of the interweb. I don't need you guys to tell me if I'm in the wrong or not, because I know for a fact I'm not. I'm just hoping you guys can maybe give me some advice on how to handle the situation effectively, and communicate that my brother is not getting $1. Update number 1. So, I called my stepdad out for lunch to discuss everything, and things did not go as planned. He actually thinks that I should split the money with my brother. He said that it would be selfish not to. I'm in shock. I always knew that my stepdad loved my brother more than me, and I got over that a long time ago. It's natural to have a preference for your own child, but never in my life did I expect him to be so blatant about it. My entire life, he's made sure that I don't call him Dad, and he's told me that he isn't my father. Let me know, in the gentlest and kindest possible way, that when he dies, I won't be getting a single thing from him. Not even one little bit. Well, But now, when it comes to his own son, he's flipping the script. Apparently, it's not fair for my brother to be in debt and me not to be, when we both got money when Mom died. I asked him how it made sense for me to give my money up when I'm the one who paid off my student loans, and he's the one who blew his inheritance from my mom on video game consoles and sneakers, then had to sell them all 3 years later to make rent. Well, the logic seemed to be going in one of my father's ears and out the other, bouncing around in his seemingly empty skull for a while and flying out the other, because he was completely ignoring my point. So, I have 3 days to transfer half the money to my brother, or I'm dead to him. His words, not mine. I don't think these bozos have ever considered the fact that they're going to get taxed on this so hard that they'll barely even see a cent. I don't have to pay taxes on my inheritance because there's no inheritance tax in my state. But there sure is transfer your brother over $1 million tax. Well, the pair of them are clueless about money and neither are good at saving. They're just being greedy. I don't even know why my stepdad is lobbying for my brother, when we both know that he won't be seeing a cent of that money if I do give in, which I won't. I tried to explain to him the double standard in expecting me to give half of my inheritance to my brother, when it's been made clear to me from the day one that my stepdad met me that I won't get a thing when he dies. But he just rolls his eyes. I pretty much shut down after that. I stopped responding to all his dumb arguments and I pretty much just retreated into myself. I think he could tell that I wasn't listening because he left pretty soon after. I know for a fact that the first thing he did when he left the restaurant was call my brother and update him on the situation. Because not even 10 minutes later, I get a call from him. I was considering letting the phone ring to send him a message, but I wanted to know what he had to say. He was doing the fake sobbing again and I just couldn't take him seriously. I told him that if he was so desperate for an inheritance, he should go and wait for his own father to die, and I hung up the phone. I do feel like that might have been a bit too harsh. I really do. But at this point, I really don't know how else to impress upon the bozos that they're not getting a dime from me. Not in a million years. Obviously, I don't wish death on my stepdad. He helped raise me for goodness sakes, but the way he's been behaving right now is absolutely insane. He should know better. The thing is this. I would have expected this kind of thing from my brother. He hates it when other people just get things and he doesn't. Mom and Dad used to have to buy him his own present on my birthday, or he would throw a fit and break things out of rage and jealousy. Whenever I commented on how unfair it was that he got something on my birthday, but I got nothing on his, I was told that I'm older and much more mature. Well, this is pretty much par the course for this kid. It's not like I knew that he was going to do this. Even if I didn't think he had this much audacity, I was sure he would whine and moan behind my back about how unfair the whole situation actually was. I did not think he'd launch this immature attack on me. It's the way my stepdad is acting that's really getting me down. I loved him like a father all my life. He raised me. He came to all my dance recitals, brought me horse riding. He did everything a father does. Sure, he always told me that he was not my father, but it did hurt. But in my head, he was my father figure. I always knew he preferred my brother, but I didn't expect him to take his side so aggressively like this. I'd expect him to pretend to be sympathetic to my brother, pat him on the back and tell him he was right. It is unfair, but I would have thought he'd secretly been on my side. My stepdad has never taken such an obvious side with my brother before. That's the problem. When we fought as kids, he would send me to my room even if I wasn't the one in the wrong. But he would always sneak up to see me later and just apologize, give me a hug and tell me I was right. Sometimes he'd even bring up a chocolate bar and tell me not to tell my brother. That's the kind of thing I expected. He always took my brother's side when he was in the room. But he always let me know privately that I was right. That's why I'm so taken aback for all this. I haven't been in my room with both my brother and stepdad at the same time in 6 months? So why the heck is my stepdad still putting on this performance? He's not a stupid guy. He has to know that I don't owe my brother anything. Anyways, here's my little update. I'm in the car right now. I just left the restaurant, and I thought you guys might be curious about how everything's been working out. I highly doubt that this is the end of it, so I'll probably be back on here soon to update. Thank you. Update number 2. I was right when I said things would not be over yet, but even I'm shocked at what this little rat did. Guys, he called the cops on me. I got a call yesterday afternoon from a cop asking me to come to the station and give a statement, because my brother is trying to get me arrested for not giving him his rightful heir. I'm in amazement. I seriously am. He didn't even tell the cops the whole story, obviously. He just said that I owed him money and refused to pay him. So, when I explained the real situation, the poor cops were so embarrassed that they made me come down to the station. They apologized so much. I thought they were going to get on their knees or something. I had to show them emails from my dad's lawyers that specifically stated I am my dad's only child. Then I showed them texts from my brother and my stepdad that say right there on the screen that they weren't related to my birth father in any way. So, I went home and I called my brother right away. I didn't even get the little rat a chance to speak. I just yelled at him louder than I've ever yelled at anyone in my life. I called him spoiled. I called him a brat. I told him he should be on his knees thanking me for the holiday, the family together, when my mom died. I aired out every grievance I've ever had with him, and then I told him never to call me again. It felt good. It felt cathartic, but I was still in a blind rage. I called my stepdad, and I know people are going to think I'm dumb for this, but I called him expecting him to know what my brother had done. I thought if he finally realized what an idiot my brother was being and how far he was taking all this, I thought that he would come to his senses and finally rein in his child, but oh no. He's known all about it. The jerk actually suggested it. I'm just shaking with anger right now. I'm trying to keep my language in check. I know there are kids on here, but I'm just so angry. I feel let down. I feel betrayed. But the hurt's like 25% of what I'm feeling now, and the rest is just pure rage. Who the heck are these guys to act like they owed a piece of my inheritance? The only thing left from my father, who is my stepfather, to be the reason my dad died with a broken heart. The very man my mom cheated on my dad with, and then disrespect him even more from the afterlife? The audacity of these idiots is astounding. They have zero credibility in this, and I have that from the mouths of 3 cops who were just as shocked as I was when their idiocy came to light. They're dead to me, and I don't feel guilty saying it. I'm officially disowning them as family members, as far as I'm concerned. After the deaths of my mom and dad, I was left with nobody. No family at all. I don't care what kind of trouble they get into. I don't care if it's the mafias threatening to cut their fingers off. Neither of them ever have the right to ask me for money. Well, sorry for the big rant. When I hung up on my stepdad yesterday, I called up a few of my friends and went to the bar right away. I drowned my anger in everything I could find. And I'm only sobering up and coming to my senses now. I was enraged yesterday, then I drank till I blacked out and forgot about it. Well, now I'm back to enraged again today. Unfortunately, I don't think it's healthy to get blackout drunk 2 days in a row to run from your troubles. So, instead, I'm trying to find catharsis by writing everything down to share with you all, good people. Well, it's not working, and going back over everything is just bringing me right back. Thanks anyways. Update 3, final update. Well, I had to call the cops. That's a really dramatic first line, I know that, but I just wanted to get it out of the way before I jump straight into this. It's been 8 months since I last posted that update, and I was expecting everything to go back to normal, but good goodness, it did not. At the end of my phone calls with both my brother and my stepdad, I told both of them not to contact me ever again. I was happy enough to just cut them out of my life, no questions asked. I don't know why I expected them to actually listen to me though. Probably just some naiveness lingering and affection for them, but oh, that's gone now. They both called me nonstop. Every time I went to sleep, I woke up with hundreds of text messages from them. So many missed calls. Calls I couldn't even count. The tone of them ranged a lot, went from pleading to anger to telling me mom would be disappointed in me for leaving my brother out. I thought they'd stop with time, lose their momentum maybe. Oh no, they didn't. After a week of this, I blocked both of their numbers. I don't know why I waited a week, but I did. After a few days apiece, where I thought it was over, they started calling me on new numbers. I didn't recognize them, so I did answer the phone. Unfortunately, when the angry text started coming in, I put 2 and 2 together again, and I blocked them again, and they got new numbers. I was kind of scared at this point. It's been 2 months of continuous harassment. Eventually, I gave in and got a new number myself, in hopes that they've been stopping calling if the number they had disconnected, but oh no, of course not. I had to update everybody at work, all my friends, cousins, and somehow they got a hold of my new number. I don't know if someone gave it to them or what, but at this point I was starting to feel unsafe. At the same time as their phone calls, I started getting strange letters in the mail. Threatening ones. There were knocks on my door in the middle of the night. I was a mess, honestly. I didn't know what to do. This was just so far outside of my realm of possibilities I could ever have come up with. It's like I didn't recognize these people. I don't know. I tried calling the cops a few times, but they just always told me that there's no crime being committed, so there's nothing that they could do. It was definitely scary. I always heard people say that money changes people, but I never imagined that people in my life would go this far. I ended up moving houses. Thanks to the money that started this mess, I managed to buy an apartment in a different part of town. It's nicer, and I'm closer to my friends, so I am happy with it. I just had to get out of that last place, because I didn't feel safe knowing that they knew where I lived. Especially with the strange noises and then knocking on my door at 4 a.m. I changed my phone number again too, and this was about 2 months ago. Everything calmed down these past 2 months. I was more careful with who I gave my number to. And, well, I made sure to only tell close friends where my new apartment was. I thought that everything had blown over, and I was finally starting to relax. But a few days ago, things changed, and it got bad again. I was out for an hour or two getting groceries, then I had lunch with a friend. When I got home, my door had been kicked in. Someone broken into my home and trashed the place. I called the cops, and finally they were able to do something to protect me. My brother and stepfather were arrested. I don't think that they were the ones who broke in, but I'm 100% sure that they paid somebody to do it. I'm fine if they rot away in prison. The cops found texts between them planning all this harassment, so there's evidence at least, and I've been told that my best option is to file a restraining order. What really bugs me is that I don't know who it was that told them my new address. Now, on top of losing a brother, my stepdad, and my birth father, I'm going to have to comb through my close friends, one by one, try to figure out which one of them is the rat, and put my safety in danger. I'm definitely pressing charges. I don't care if I have to pay for an amazing lawyer. I'm not letting them get away with this at all. I'm going to use the money they wanted and hire the best therapist in state while they're rotting. I'm going mad like crazy. This was kind of a wild ride, I know. I just want to say that I appreciate all you guys for sticking it out with me through it all. My final piece of advice is, y'all, to this. If you come into a lot of money, don't you tell a soul. Alright guys, I just felt so bad for OP during this story. I mean, she literally lost everybody that she cared for. But the ones that were cracking me the most were the half-brother and the stepfather. And also the friend at the end who turned out to be a rat and gave away all her information. That's 3 loved ones that OP is now just cutting out of her life, all because of jealousy and money. Has to do with the inheritance always. Now, if you've been with the channel for quite some time, you would know how many sticky inheritance stories we've seen, but this one might be the worst because it was just so obvious from the get-go. They were after her money. Let me know your thoughts on this story, guys. I would love to know. What would you have done if you were in this position? Would you said, you know what? I am going to help you out. I'm not going to give you half of it because that's absurd, but I'm going to pay for your student loans to make sure you're not in debt, and I'm going to give you a little bit more cash. Or would you go the route that OP went and said, you know what? This is my money. You're not entitled to it at all, and you should have asked nicely. My mother used my hard-earned inheritance on no other than my stupid, steamy ex, who, by the way, my mother's using to pay for the entire wedding. This is a disaster. I met my wife Nora 6 years ago. It was my mother who introduced her to me. I was 29 back then and had just gotten out of a toxic relationship. Not just a toxic relationship, but an emotionally exhausting one. My girlfriend back then was someone I met at university, and I courted her for months before we actually got together. I was smitten with her and had poured me everything into that relationship. We dated for 3 years, and I even planned to get married to her. Well, that's what I had thought. But everything that I wished or hoped for got ruined. When one day, when I was out of town and she was alone in her apartment, I had to meet a potential client and my boss had sent me to meet him. I had no hunch of what was happening in my absence. So, what happened was that my girlfriend was alone in her apartment when she heard someone banging on the door. Scared and hesitant, she went to open it. She peeked out the door hole and saw my mother. Naively, she opened the door and Mother barged in and started to question her about me. My girlfriend tried her best to calm her, but my mother had other plans. She started to throw vases and decoration pieces on the floor, breaking the glass and shattering it all. My girlfriend was scared but tried not to panic. But my mother was there to do something, not just scare her, and she did it. She physically harmed her as she started yanking her hair and punching her. My girlfriend pushed her away and ran towards her room. She had no choice but to call the cops. My mom was taken to the police station and fined. My girlfriend's parents were so mad that even before I could arrive back, hearing the news, they broke up with me on the phone. After that, I tried calling her again, but that only resulted in me getting a restraining order and her calling it quits. I stopped calling her when I learned she got together with another man, and this way our relationship ended. I was all depressed and low for months and did not meet up with my mom. But then I forgave her as she was the only family I had, being an only child with no father whatsoever. Anyways, a month later, when things cooled down and I stopped crying about the whole incident, and the news of my breakup finally reached, my mother visited me. Talking about her, my mom had always been an emotionally distant and strict parent to me, and she had always abused me mentally and hurt me physically. The reason was because my father cheated on her when she was pregnant with me. Not only that, but he also ran away, dumping his responsibilities on her so she had to raise me all alone. And because of my uncanny resemblance with my father, she had disliked, if not hated, my entire existence. She'd always blamed me for her horrible life, and I've been the victim of her wrath and loathing my whole life. And that's one of the reasons why I moved out when I was just 17. I've worked my butt off to be where I am today. From doing minimum wage part-time jobs to now being a bank manager. I've earned it all by my hard work and perseverance. Anyways, when she heard about my breakup, she started pestering me to be in a relationship again. Just get settled as soon as possible. I refused her tons of times, but she was adamant to set me up with somebody of her choosing. Now that my choice was completely out of the picture, I had to eventually give up and give it a shot. Mom started to look for somebody suitable for me, and that's when she introduced me to Nora, the daughter of her best friend. Nora was a pretty girl and had an outgoing personality. She was loud and a confident person, far away from my type but decent enough to give it a chance. And that's how we started talking and going on dates. We didn't really click off or felt sparks like it's usually felt by meeting your person, but we were both looking for someone to get married fast. I found her mature and my mother had a good bonding with her, and she found me financially stable and settled, so somehow we both agreed on getting married. My first priority was my career, and I knew I had to settle down with somebody sooner or later, and eventually I agreed. There weren't any major changes in my life after marriage. Nora and I were acting civil towards each other, but we hardly spoke to one another. What I noticed was that she was much happier around my mom, which I didn't really mind, but her only talking to her and ignoring my whole existence did not make any sense to me. Even then, I stayed quiet, but problems started arising when Nora quit her job and simply wanted to stay at home. I had no issue until she started throwing parties, going shopping with Mom, and always dining outside. In short, wasting my money and neglecting our house. And when I actually confronted her, things got even more messy. Nora called her parents and my mother and victimized herself and made excuses for exactly her thing she was doing wrong, her behavior. As me bossing her around and ignoring her, nobody sided with me, and I had to apologize, but that just caused a drift between us. After that, I avoided her like a plague. What I had expected was her realizing her mistake and an apology, but what I got was her acting nonchalant and staying away even more. Just to add fuel to the fire, Nora moved out of a shared room and settled into a guest bedroom. We started having arguments often, and she just stopped caring. My workload was also eating me alive, so I didn't have the energy to deal with her. Though I started noticing her strange behavior and calling somebody late at night. I didn't want to accuse her of anything. I didn't confront her and decided to make sure there was actually something wrong going on, and I'm just not being paranoid. After that, I started keeping tabs on her. But even after being all alert and meticulous for a month, I did not find anything, so I dropped the issue. Nora again surprised me, though, and that happened when a few days later I could not find one of the office files. I questioned her about it. She refused to even see it and told me that she was too tired to look for it with me, and though the reason wasn't that big, it did cause a lot of tension between us. But then, my mom came over and they both talked for quite some time, about God knows what. Strangely, after that, she started caring about me and our house and started showing interest in our relationship. Her sudden change of attitude was although surprising, but I took it positively. Our relationship started getting better. I gave her a second chance to prove me wrong, but, well, she did. Things got smoother, and Nora started to help me out with housework and managing the chores. She started being nice to me and even started asking me to buy her gifts, which I complied to. But as time passed, she started demanding more and more expensive and branded items. And though they didn't leave a dent on my bank account, I was sure, if things kept going at this rate, I might be going bankrupt soon. Anyways, that did not happen since I was transferred to another country, and was asked to lead the new branch there for a period of 4 years. So yes, although we were married, I would visit Nora just once a few months. And I thought we were going strong since we no longer argued and Nora would understand my situation and never complain anymore. When that long period of time finally ended, I came back. The first thing I noticed in her was her change of demeanor. She would talk to me and we'd spend time together. She started going out more and would even return late into the night. I tried to talk to her about it, but Nora dismissed it as she had a social life too, and I should respect that. I didn't try anything after that, but I started noticing whenever I would come home late, there would always be 2 whiskey glasses on the table. Well, Nora claimed it's her friends, but the musky perfume scent said otherwise. So I decided to investigate. One day, I called Nora, lying to her that I'd be coming home late. I knew I was going to see it myself, so I decided to go early and see it out. But, to my bad luck, something that I never expected happened. But maybe that bad luck was something that saved me. From the misfortune I would face in the future, and here it goes. What actually happened was that I packed up my things and drove back home early, hoping that it was all just me overthinking and nothing else. But what I didn't know was I would be met with my worst nightmare once I walked into our apartment. I remember just punching in the code, not knocking at the door as I entered, and made a beeline to our bedroom, trying to be as quiet as possible. My heart was thumping when I approached that bedroom door and opened it slowly. That's when I got the biggest shock of my life. Seeing my wife of 5 years with another man being cozy. I felt my heart being ripped out of my chest as the realization of being cheated by my lover dawned upon me. Wordlessly, I walked towards them. My blood was boiling at this point, so I could not just leave like that. I neared them, punching the man in the jaw, almost breaking it, and pushing her away harshly as she tried to stop me before walking towards the man again, and lashed onto him. I remember her screaming her lungs out as I continued to throw punches at the man who writhed around in pain. I had to stop when I felt a burning pain on the back of my neck. I registered. My wife was holding a vase, now broken as she whacked it across my head. I don't remember much as I fainted on the spot, apparently. I woke up in a hospital. I saw my mother and Nora talking to each other as she cried and Mom consoled her. Anger rushed through my vessels again. I hissed sitting up and yelled at Nora to get lost, but my mother stepped in, berating me for trying to hurt her. I felt a headache popping up hearing her nonsense, and I glared at the woman standing beside my mother as I spilled whatever she was doing behind my back, but my mom refused to believe me. She literally sided with her. Her feigning ignorance and Mom's constant unnecessary support made me lose my calm as I yelled at both of them to get out. Mother was shocked to see me behave like that, but seeing my aggravation stage, she complied, but not before throwing insults back at me and also bringing my father in. Anyways, it turned pretty ugly and I spat venom at the woman exposing her disgusting act, and then made a promise to myself to wipe her existence completely from my life. The moment I got out of the hospital and got discharged, I scheduled a meeting with my attorney and told him about the whole situation. I was asked if I wanted to drag the woman for attacking him, but we just thought of it as it's a unnecessary issue as I attacked first. So though it could prove me right, I discarded the idea and just requested them to ready the divorce papers. When my mom got to know about it, she was of course against it as I was finally cutting off her favorite girl. Mom and I had a fight where she blamed it all on me, calling me the reason for failing this marriage and yeah, of course, siding with her. But I didn't care. I knew I needed to cut the woman out of my life no matter what, so I did. Nora tried to apologize to me and talk things out, but I just refused to listen, and asked for them to carry out the divorce proceedings, and soon we did get a divorce. I could not be more relieved and tension-free, but there was something I got to know a few weeks later, and that just made me lose my temper. And that was my mom housing my ex-wife and supporting her. Despite the fact that she cheated on me, I broke contact with my mom after that, and though it was hard, I had to. But the case was not closed yet, as our relatives and friends also got to know about the divorce. I was questioned all the time about the reason for our divorce, but since I just avoided, I don't know, my side of the story was considered dead, and everybody just believed Nora. So most of my relatives just boycotted me, making me some kind of devil and victimizing her. I couldn't really blame them when my own mother was the one who started it and sided with her. Anyways, I was just so isolated and misunderstood, but even then I stood my ground, and despite the pressure from everybody, I did not falter. Only 2 months had passed when I decided to pay my mom a visit, since she never did, and the loneliness just kept eating me up. I went to our house and knocked on the door. But what I did not expect was my ex-wife opening the door instead of her. It was hard for me to control my anger as I stared at her. I pushed her away, barging in and started calling for my mom. When she came out of her bedroom and saw me, she still did not seem to care about my emotions, and she told me that she straight up had no support for whatever I had to say. And I have no say in it. So after that shocking revelation that my mother was letting my ex-wife stay with her and was still siding with her, I found it useless to talk things out with Mom. So I just stayed away from them. And, well, decided to not stay in touch with her for real. It was disheartening to witness her cruel behavior towards her own son, but it was not unexpected whatsoever since she hated me from day one probably. Anyways, what I did not know was there was still a lot of trouble waiting for me, and things were not quite done yet. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Today's story comes complete with 4 updates. It took me a while to find all these postings by OP, but I found every single one. If you guys are new to the channel, my name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories every single day, so go ahead and smash that subscribe button. It does help support me a lot, and I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and jump into update number 1, shall we? Well, after finding out that my ex-wife was living at my mother's house and me not going there anymore, it all finally started just taking a toll on me. The past year's mental exhaustion started showing and I got sick. The 2 weeks I stayed sick with no one to care for, I realized how even my blood-related relatives and my own mother did not care a bit about me. All these thoughts affected my mental health too, but just when I thought I already got a lot on my plate, I started having problems at work too. Our company had some accusations about corruption, so an investigation was started, and during the whole time they seized our salaries, calling it a need amidst the crisis. I don't know. This whole ordeal resulted in us struggling for our bills for months. I didn't have much money to pay my bills, so I had to use my savings. But soon they all got used to, so I decided to take some money from the bank account. But the problem arose when I noticed a significant portion of my money was missing. I contacted the bank to get a history of transactions, and I've done to make sure that there was not any kind of error. The moment I got it, my eyes were ready to pop out of my sockets. Seeing it was my own mother's number from where they were transacted, and I remembered how my mom had made her tell her all the account information and even had to allow my mother to be given access. But the whole situation seemed ridiculous, since she was acting like I was nothing to her and supporting my ex-wife, and then was using money all the time. My money. I decided to send her a text respectfully, telling her not to use my money again, and I considered it as the last time to let her go, rather than confronting her, but my mom did not stop. Just 2 days later, I received an alert telling me that a big amount was transacted again from my account. I immediately called them and asked for only me to be allowed to access, and went to her house to get the money back. Thankfully, she was home, alone when I went there. I asked her she better return my money, and told her not to use my money again, which angered her, and she starts yelling at me and sobbing hard, as she mentioned her struggles when she took care of me when I was just a kid. I just rolled my eyes, reminding her that it was her responsibility since, I was a kid. Just when the words left my mouth, she stormed towards me and slapped me across the face. Wow, it absolutely shocked me. I hear her yell that she should have drowned me or abandoned me. She was getting more and more violent by each passing second, and I noticed the neighbors gathering around to watch. This only made my anxiety skyrocket, and I had to leave. Update number 2. After that unfortunate incident, I did not get to meet my mom again, and neither had the energy to. I decided to let go of the matter and start anew. I was still single and had not had anyone to help me or take care of me. My company was recovering from all the loss that it went through. I visited my company again, pleading with them to please have me work again for them. Fortunately, my boss agreed, though I was not getting my rightfully deserved pay. I was still relieved that it was something I needed, and even a little amount was more than nothing. I started working again and spending time outside rather than the depressing house. My friends noticed my lethargic state and invited me for drinks, which I obliged. My luck wasn't on my side, as I remember drinking nonstop, but then I saw a very familiar face. My ex-wife, Nora! Enjoying her time with a man. Ugh. I rolled my eyes. These kinds of people just ruin other lives and don't even feel guilty. I zeroed my eyes onto the man and noticed it was the same man I beat that day, and when I came home early. I soon left the club and took a cab home. It was unnecessary for her to marry me or cheat on me while being with another guy. That night was difficult. I cried my eyes out thinking about my mother and her behavior towards me, and what I went through, it broke my heart. The next day, when I woke up, I made a decision. I decided to move out of the crappy house with horrible memories to the house my granddad gifted me in inheritance. I decided to sell this one and use the money to start up my own business while moving into the house. So I went to my study and started rummaging through my files. I felt my anxiety doubling as I failed to find the file of the house ownership, and after 2 hours I couldn't find it. I called my attorney telling him about the whole situation. He calmed me down and told me that they will have to check the records, and that way it might be possible to get the files. But a month passed, and there was no progress until I received a call from the local police station, where I had filed a complaint for robbery, and they told me that they've arrested a suspect who tried to sell the house and got caught. My heart was thumping loudly as I just drove to the police station, but my heart dropped to my stomach, seeing my mother sitting there. Her eyes were throwing daggers at me, and I tried to make her tell me the reason for doing something like this. At the end of the day, she got a warning, and I let her go as the file was handed back to me. I told Mom that if she want to settle down the situation with me, she's allowed to come to my house, as I might be moving away soon, and this might be the one of the few last times she will ever see me. To my surprise, she agreed. But what I didn't know was that she was only going to bring more trouble. Update number 3. So, the next day I was having a peaceful breakfast in my apartment when I heard the doorbell ring. I got up and walked towards the door, opening it slowly. My mom was standing there, but with a mad face. I wasn't sure anymore if she was there to have a peaceful conversation at all. She pushed me aside and entered the home. I followed her inside immediately. She didn't waste any seconds as she asked me why I reported her to the cops. Her jaw was clenched and eyes blown wide. I frowned and told her truthfully that I was just looking for my file and had no idea it could be with her, or even had a slightest hunch that she might have stolen it. That thought did not cross my mind at all. I was still in the middle of talking and explaining the situation to her when I saw her running towards me, and she was holding a knife. She charged towards me, but thanks to my quick reflexes, I stepped aside. But this resulted in her losing her balance and falling on the table and stabbing her own torso. She let out a loud shriek as she writhed in pain. I just stood there, watching her face twist in pain and her loud screams before finally helping her stand up and drive her to the hospital. She was taken away for treatment while I waited outside. Letting out a long sigh, I called my ex-wife, informing her of the incident, so it did not take long to get to the hospital. I tried not to break her jaw with a punch as I saw her leisurely walking towards me. Before I could open my mouth to inform her what happened, she started talking. She was groaning and cursing at my mother, saying that the old woman could not even do one job right, and when I asked what do you mean, she wasted no time in bragging to me that all this time the stupid woman, her words not mine, was helping her out, and now she promised to sell your inherited property and give her the money to support her wedding. I narrowed my eyes, hearing her words as I questioned her about what she was trying to say. Well, Nora absolutely wasted no time. No time at all. Just to mock me as she started laughing that she was enjoying her time with her new man, while telling a fake pity-patty story to my mother, who would then give her money, and was even ready to sell that house and steal it for her when she got busted. I watched her laugh like a maniac, but what she did not know was me pressing the recording button on my phone the whole time. I left the hospital when the doctor told me her condition was stable. Nora was still there, probably for damage control and to feed her a new narrative, but what she did not know was that her good days were going to end soon, and I'll make sure of that. That one recording was enough to prove my whole stance true and expose her for the lies, which I did. Update number 4. Final update posted by OP. Hey guys, so just an update. I visited my lawyer and provided him with the recording. I explained the situation to him, and oh boy, he asked me a ton of questions, just to make sure that there was not any plot holes and that our statement could not be easily denied, in case they tried. With the help of him, I filed a complaint against my mom and Nora. I made sure to add all her crimes for stealing, bluffing, just to attack me, and including Nora for manipulation, and being the mastermind behind the whole ordeal. My case was too strong to be refuted, and both the woman did not have the money to hire a good lawyer, so I easily won the case. Both Nora and Mom were fined and given punishment, declaring guilty. Nora tried to contact me, asking me to take the claims back and spare her, but I turned a deaf ear to her and proceeded with the case. The day the verdict was announced, I could see color draining from their faces. However, Nora was still good at hiding her emotions, but Mother could not, since, well, she was also given a jail sentence of a year for attacking me. So when she started yelling and attacking like a madwoman, it was ordered to let her take a seat, to check if she was mentally stable, and if not, she would be staying in a rehabilitation center for the time being. Talking about Nora, I also added a claim about her trying to get my property by unfair means. So, she was fined for that too, as the recording served as good evidence. So when they both got what they deserved, I walked back home. And though my heart felt a little heavy seeing my mom ending up this way, I knew she was harmful and could potentially harm others too. So I discarded all such thoughts and decided to focus on myself. I then sold my old house, as I had always wanted, and moved into the house my grandfather gave me. It was bigger and had a nice lawn, so I'd make sure to clear my mind by doing yoga or jogging in the morning. My previous company was still struggling, so I applied for a new job and got it, fortunately, because of my good performance and experience. I again started living good, saving money while also spending on myself. Other than that, I did hear about my mom being discharged, and I even heard that Nora just disappeared and there's no trace of her anymore. Some of my relatives, well, they assume she was dead. But I'll tell you right now, that's none of my concern at all. I was living a good life without them, and, well, that's all that really mattered. So it got so bad to the point where OP basically just had to cut contact with his mother. I would not know what to do if this was my position, and while my mom was going behind my back, basically betraying me with my ex, paying for the wedding and just letting her live there, all this nonsense. But I do know there's two sides to a story, but it doesn't really matter. Let's talk about, what do you guys think about this story? So this might be one of the most bizarre stories. My sister, she pretended our parents passed away so she can take advantage of that and get us to sign a paper that essentially will give us every single bit of the inheritance handed over to her. Well, you know what? I'm on to her, and her plan is so stupid. Let me expose it. My older sister, let's call her Caroline, has always been a control freak. All the way back when we were really little, I'm talking 5 or 6 years old, she would tell us how to play, how to brush our teeth, what TV programs we should watch. She even told us how to chew our food. It was absolutely awful. My brother, 27, let's call him James, he has type 1 diabetes, and our sister would insist on tracking what he ate and how much he exercised. She would always, quote, volunteer to read his blood sugar. I mean, it wasn't really volunteering, she forced him to do it. And he always let her because he was such a little kid. You can imagine how my parents felt about this? Well, maybe you can't. Maybe some of you have parents who would take one look at such a controlling little girl and nip that in the bud. Put an end to that right then and there by introducing what was become maybe the most important word in my life. Boundaries. Freaking boundaries. I wish I'd learned about this concept sooner, and maybe I would not have suffered so much with Caroline. My parents, though, thought she was responsible. It was a real load off of them knowing that James' blood sugar was red and Caroline was looking out for the both of us. Both of our parents worked full-time, and my dad is a mechanic and my mom is a secretary at school. We didn't have a lot of money. We were middle class, and there wasn't extra money to hire a babysitter. No grandparents either, because both of my parents are immigrants, and their parents stayed behind. So enter Caroline to fill the child-mending gap. Sometimes I wonder whether Caroline is like this because my parents relied on her so much, or if they relied on her so much because she is like this. It's a chicken and the egg kind of question that I'll probably never get to the bottom of. Maybe I don't need to. I can't change the past. All I can do is focus on the present. The problem is that Caroline never seemed to develop any awareness of her controlling behavior. While I started to get my period in middle school, she actually began to track my menstrual cycle. She would tell me things like, "Oh, you're just getting grumpy because it's that time of the month." Well, you know what? I was grateful for that information, but honestly, I could have just looked it up online. I did not need her creepy, controlling nonsense in what was already a really stressful time for me. She did other things too. She found a nudie magazine that James was hiding under his bed and got him to admit where he got it from. A kid in his karate class. Instead of handling the matter with some discretion and sensitivity to James' feelings, Caroline became the morality police. She went to the friend's house and told his parents. Can you even imagine? She convinced our parents to give her our allowance so that she could decide how we spent our money. The worst part was how she responded if you did not do things the way she wanted you to do them. First, she would look at you like she was going to kill you. Sometimes, if she was really mad, she would go into the screaming fit. She would call me every name in the book, although always when our parents could not hear. Or she would grab us by the arm and twist it or pinch us until we gave in to what she was demanding. If, at that point, we still resisted, she would find ways to torture us, like pretending she had locked us outside of the house in freezing weather, or hacking into our email accounts and sending out our private messages to other friends on our contact list. Yeah, the whole time she managed to do this without tipping off Mom and Dad, who continued to think that she was super responsible. Caroline, if they confronted her, she straight up lied, and they bought every single word that came out of her little mouth. It made me sick, and it made me absolutely enraged. And yet, for a long time, I did not realize how wrong it was. It was not until I was in my teenage years and started to tell my friends about the way that Caroline behaved that I understood what she was doing. It was abuse. So, I tried to tell James, but at first he got scared. He was scared of Caroline, and the idea of talking about her behind his back terrified him. I realized that he was even more traumatized than I was. Maybe because he had a fewer friends and because when he was really little, he had been taught because of the diabetes that Caroline was almost like his nurse. Eventually, after I moved out, James came to agree that it was abuse. He was afraid of using that word, especially with our parents who thought that we were just overreacting. When I was 17, I decided that I did not need Mom and Dad's permission anymore. If I did not want to live with an abuser, I didn't have to. I already had a job working as a server at Denny's after school and on the weekends. I packed up some things and went to live with a girl that I worked with who had already graduated high school. A year later, I graduated too and was looking for a better job. I found one as a personal assistant at a talent agency. 4 years later, I had become a talent agent myself and was starting to earn pretty good money on commission. Of course, it was scary to leave at 17. My parents were really disappointed in me at first, and, I also felt bad about leaving James at home alone. He had started taking classes at the community college but was still living with Caroline, Mom, and Dad. Caroline was in her 20s at the point and was going out with this guy named Oliver, who she's now married to. See, Oliver's family owned a chain of bakeries, and Caroline oversaw quality control in the industrial facility. It was kind of the perfect job for her because she could be as anal and bossy as she even wanted to be. And it was basically in her job description. I heard that there were some complaints from the staff who did not like the way that she treated them. But the upshot is that during that time, the bakery started to make more money, and Oliver's family liked her a lot. Well, to each their own, I guess. After I moved out, I tried to stay away from home as much as possible. If I wanted to see James or our parents, I would set up a coffee date in another part of the town or invite them over to dinner. Caroline hated this, as you can imagine. I never invited her, only once or twice, because my parents pressured me. She married Oliver, and they had their own house in the suburbs, a big ugly McMansion that she could just lord over as much as she wanted. Within a few years, they had a couple of children, and then Caroline had more people she could mold and abuse with her control freak behavior. I felt so sorry for those kids, and of course I went to visit them when they were born. They were so perfect, so tiny, and already Caroline was controlling every aspect of their experience. We weren't allowed to hold them, only she was. Not even Oliver was allowed to dress or feed them because he might do it wrong. Poor guy. He just stood there grinning like a fool as his wife bossed everybody around. Just like that. Well, Caroline would still try to get me via social media. I honestly could not believe how persistent she was. Well, at first it was a comment here or there, as if to say, "I'm still here, I'm still watching you." Well, that was fine. She could comment all she wanted, but I did not care. Then she started talking to my friends and posting things on my wall on Facebook about what I've been doing in my photos. For example, "Nice dress at the GG party, but why did you not go with the green one, girl? Gray washes you out." And I'd be like, "Girl, you did not." I just can't let this stuff go like that from most people. But I'm great at letting others know when they've crossed the line. Like I say, boundaries. But with Caroline, it's another story. She's really just getting under my skin. She knows it and knows how to manipulate it, saying just the thing that will put you on defense. That's how she gets her superpower. By getting other people to feel like they have to respond to her. I'd say the worst thing is that you can do to Caroline is ignore her. So, that's what I've been doing for the last few years. James, too, and you know what? It worked. Well, sort of. She did not go away entirely, and she kept trying to send us messages via our parents, so I eventually just had to block her on socials. James doesn't have them, so it was not an issue for him. He still lives at home, though, so it's harder to avoid her, Well, I think he just leaves when she's there. After a while, I had to tell Mom and Dad that I did not want to hear anything about Caroline, and it broke their heart. I think. But at the same time, I got the impression that they were finally getting it, that Caroline had an absolute control problem. And it started to push the people in her life away. Still, it did not prepare them for what happened the other day. Every summer, Mom and Dad go away for 2 months to a cabin that belongs to one of our uncles, Uncle Ron, who I guess was friends with my grandpa back in the day. Ron is a funny guy, a bachelor that we always suspected was either gay or just totally uninterested in romance or anything. He made a lot of money in the .com boom in the 90s, so he traveled a lot and had houses worldwide. This cabin is near Killarney, was way up north. and I guess Ron uses it for ice fishing in the winter. Mom and Dad spent their honeymoon there, so every year for their anniversary they drive 6 hours to the cabin and just spend the week there. Well, I never really wanted to imagine what they were doing up there. Ew. Dad calls it the yearly Spice Your Marriage Up retreat, and that's as far as I've ever wanted to imagine. Of course, as they've gotten older, it's a little stressful for us, knowing that they're alone up there with nobody around for miles. My folk had us when they were already in their late 30s, so Dad is almost 70. He's a tough guy, but you never know, his heart isn't really 100% since he developed sleep apnea. So, if something, ever happened to him, how could Mom get help? She doesn't drive, there's no cell phone service, and every once in a while you see other fishermen on the lake, but that doesn't count for much in an emergency, now does it? Well, anyways, this year, there were bad wildfires up where the cabin was, and not in the country itself, but close enough that it left a blanket of haze over everything and made swimming, boating, and hiking unpleasant to say the least. So, my parents just decided to drive around the different counties up north, visiting old friends and staying inside until the smoke from the fire dissipates. Toward the end of this tour, they decided to drop in on me. My place is a few hours outside of the city, not exactly close to it, but not nearly as far. So, I was the last stop before they returned to the cabin. They still had a month up there, and the fires have been put out several days ago, and the smoke was even clearing up. My folks are not very great at communicating. They show up and expect that I'll be home, which is okay since they are such good company, and I usually am at home. So, I invited them in and made some coffee. I guess they've forgotten to turn their cell phones back on after being out of range. Otherwise, I probably would have gotten an alert from them. I'd convinced my mom to let me set up location sharing for when they went away, so I wouldn't have to worry as much. That's the real difference between Caroline and me. And I actually worry about people's well-being, and she pretends to worry so she can influence what you do. Well, we had just sat down to have coffee, and Dad was telling a boring story about finding animal tracks or poop, or something, around the cabin. So my phone starts to vibrate, and I assumed it was work, so I excused myself and entered the bedroom. It was Caroline. She was crying. So I asked her what's wrong, and I may loathe her controlling ways, but she's still my sister. Through snobs and sniffles, I heard her say, "They're gone. They're gone." Well, I asked her what she's talking about, and my first thought was that something had happened to my nephews and Oliver. So I broke out into a cold sweat as I imagined that they've been in some terrible accident. Maybe their car flipped over, or they've been at a school event, and it was all just awful things that the stuff you see on the news. Well, she told me our mom and dad were gone. She said that she had just found out and that she's gotten a call from their lawyer, and when I asked her what they died from, she said carbon monoxide poisoning. I asked her what she was talking about. The cabin didn't even have gas. She said that her Uncle Ron had put in a central heater last year, adding that he probably just cheaped out on the installation, and then she started yelling, "But aren't you hearing me? I'm telling you they're gone." Well, she was crying, or at least pretending to, but I could also tell she was getting angry. Part of me wanted to tell her I knew she was lying, that Mom and Dad were fine. Sitting in my kitchen, however, another part, a stronger part, wanted to see where this was going. So, somewhere in the back of my mind, I was thinking, this is my chance. Finally, they're all going to see what a manipulative liar that she truly is. Jesus, Caroline. I paused as though I was in shock. I need to sit down. I pretended to cry, making my voice sound like I was actually sobbing. I asked her for details, and she said that she's gotten a call an hour ago from Killarney County Police. They found them both in bed, asphyxiated. Oh my gosh. At that moment, my mom walked by the bedroom on her way to the bathroom, and she looked like she was going to say something to me, so I put my fingers to my lip, pretending that I was on a work call. I heard Caroline stop crying and clear her throat. When she spoke again, she sounded calmer. I guess she swallowed my performance and just really thought I believed her. So, she said that she thought that we would see each other eye to eye, and that it's not good to be alone at a time like this. "Can you call James and arrange a meeting?" she asked. I said I would call him, and then we said goodbye, with Caroline saying that she was so sorry to be the one to break the news, that she loved me and did not want me to worry. Everything would just be all right. Well, you know what? I just faked it until the last second, then I hung up and I laughed. My mom had finished in the bathroom and was standing by the door. "Is everything all right, honey?" I told her that the call was from work, and she said that she thought she heard me crying. "Oh, well, one of the other agents is a real joker and always cracks me up to the point of tears." My parents were obviously tired and still had a few 100 miles to drive, and I decided not to tell them about Caroline's ploy, because even though it was funny to me that she'd been so insanely bold, I knew that Mom and Dad would be hurt and upset, and so we hugged and kissed goodbye, and I called James. He was confused as I was, although he was also pretty upset because he's also just always been more sensitive about stuff. "What? Why the duck would she do that, man?" Well, I said I wasn't sure. It was just another one of Caroline's twisted games. So James asked if we should not tell our parents in case Caroline tried to do something to hurt them. I don't think they were actually in danger, and I guess that whatever she was doing was probably about money. But we don't know until we meet with her, I said. So I convinced James to join us tomorrow morning because I was worried. Though James is a terrible liar, the absolute opposite of Caroline, I did not think he would be able to keep a straight face. On the other hand, he is also such a nervous guy that I've literally seen him laugh at a funeral because of the discomfort. So maybe if it came to that, I could blame it on his nerves. Then I called Caroline back and we planned to meet at her house. I spent the rest of the evening relaxing with my cat and drinking G&Ts, trying to figure out, well, Caroline's long game. I'll update you when I find out. Update number 1. So, we met at Caroline's McMansion at 9 a.m. sharp the following day. I brought Danishes and coffee, and James showed up looking tired and disheveled, which, to be honest, is his habitual look. But it worked now, given the circumstances. Okay, under the crocodile tears, Caroline looked as though she had slept 8 hours uninterrupted. I bet she had. I bet she was feeling pretty damn good. Well, the phase 1 of her plan was complete. She started by sitting us down, insisting that we have a group hug. When we, quote, brought it in, I was surprised to notice that Caroline smelled a little boozy. And not last night boozy either, fresh like she's been drinking that morning. Although, with plenty of mouthwash on top, has she been celebrating, or was this a new development? Also, the house was kind of a disaster. Ever since she's lived there, Caroline had a house cleaner come twice a week. The place always sparkled, and now there were dishes in the sink and the floor looked sticky in the kitchen. There were kids' toys everywhere, and I asked how my nephews were. And Oliver. Caroline narrowed her eyes and said that they were just fine, thank you. Then she went back to being shocked and grieving Caroline. After we had been shocked and grieving for a while, she got to the point. Aside from needing to be among family at this time, there was a practical matter to attend to. She went to the credenza and took out a folder. This unpleasantness is Mom and Dad's final will and testament. She sniffed and just wiped a non-existent tear from her little eye. "Sorry," said James. "Why do we have to deal with that now? Shouldn't we go and check on Mom and Dad first to see if the bodies found were really theirs?" I looked at him. For a second, it was as if he's forgotten it was all nothing more than a lie. I nudged him when Caroline wasn't looking. "Well, go along with it," I mouthed, and he nodded. Caroline, she just simply looked at James, asking if he did not believe her. Our older sister went on to explain that she had gotten a call from a lawyer shortly after the call from the police, and I was wondering how come the lawyer came to know about Mom and Dad's death even before us. And he went ahead to call Caroline right after the police, but I did not point out this loophole in Caroline's narrative because eventually everything that she was saying or going to say was nothing more than a lie. So Caroline says that the lawyer claimed to represent Mom and Dad, although I did not recognize the name, which was not that of their usual lawyer, a family friend. Caroline admitted that she's been skeptical as well, and she said that the lawyer, if he had contacted us, and He said he only had Caroline's number, as the eldest child. She had been nominated as the executor of the estate. So she just pretended that this had not eliminated her doubt. She went to the law office, and the lawyer had all the paperwork in order, signed by our parents and a witness, whose name Caroline did recognize as being that same family friend who did legal work for our parents in the past. She laid it out for us. Mom and Dad did not want us dealing with a hefty death tax on their estate transfer, so James, always skeptical, asked if this was really legal. While avoiding all eye contact, Caroline said it wasn't illegal, but rather a clever backdating trick. It sounds shady as hell. Yeah, but their lawyer gave it the green light, Caroline reassured us. We checked the paperwork, and I asked why there was a rush. Caroline explained it's all time sensitive, and that waiting would make the backdating look a bit fishy. She planned to split the estate after covering funeral costs, and she said there was a catch. We had to front the lawyer fee and transfer tax pronto. Well, James was actually short on cash, so I volunteered to cover. Caroline mentioned the big sum, asking for bank drafts by the weekend. I agreed, and Caroline, as the executor, wanted drafts in her name, for simplicity. We chatted briefly in a really superficial way about the kids and Ollie. Caroline seemed suspicious that I was asking about them or defensive of something. On the way home, James floated the idea of reporting it as fraud, and I suggested waiting for our parents' opinion, throwing in the idea of a road trip. Sure, I got nothing else going on. So, we decided to drive back to our parents' house so James could get his stuff. That's what he's doing right now as I type this out. Guys, I'm not sure I'll read all your replies, but it's good to have this account and have the story written out in one place. Who knows, this post might be read out loud in court one day. Updates to follow. Update number 2. The drive to the cabin is 6 hours if you don't stop. When we were kids going to visit Uncle Ron, my dad drove straight through. Maybe there would be one pee break, but other than that, it was sandwiches in the car and us driving each other bonkers in the back seat. James and I decide to visit Mom and Dad at the cabin, and we stop to take a break from driving just now. He's a vapor, and I don't like smoke in my car. Also, we enjoy the luxury of taking as many pee breaks as we want. While he was vaping, I decided to take a peek at Caroline and Oliver's social media. I could not help but notice that she had stopped posting photos of the children, and there were pictures of Oliver in what looked like another state with my nephews. So I decided to DM him. He happened to be online and just replied to me straight away. Reaching out, I asked Oliver directly if everything was okay with Caroline. There was a pause, and I could see the 3 dots indicating that he was taking his time to chat. His message appeared on the screen, basically conveying that things were not okay. He had taken the kids to stay with their grandparents for a while, and I hesitated, apologizing if it was none of my business, Oliver reassured me that it's okay, expressing the relief of sharing with somebody who knows Caroline. I suggested a phone call, and we agreed to talk later that day. So James just came back from vaping, and we are now resuming our drive. Update number 4. By the time we arrived, it was evening and the sun was beginning to set. We pulled into Uncle Ron's lot, and tree branches brushed the top of my vehicle. This was always my favorite part about driving there. Well, it was like we were entering a secret passage made of birch trees. Mom and Dad were outside, and Dad was building a fire while Mom sat doing a crossword puzzle. They were fully clothed, thank goodness, and I don't know why I thought they might not be. Obviously, they were super surprised to see us. Happy surprised, I'd say. Which was good. They wanted to know what we were even doing here. At first, we pretended that we've been going to a music festival at the last minute and decided to stop to say hello. I let that white lie go until after dinner, when the shock of us being there had mellowed out a bit. I didn't want to give my father a heart attack. Mom, Dad, James and I are not really going to a music festival. We came because there's something very urgent to tell you. So, we told them the whole story from the phone call to the meeting to us coming up to tell them. We tried to be as objective as possible, and I did not want them to think that we were the ones out to get Caroline, who they still thought of as their responsible daughter. You know what? It was very hard for them, though. They did not know what to believe. Luckily, James has been smart. When Caroline wasn't paying attention, he took a picture of a photo of the fake documents with his Apple Watch. The photo was blurry, of course, but you could tell crystal clear that it was a document dealing with our parents' death. Dad expressed disbelief, stating this is insane. What do we even do? James and I shared glances and then carefully began outlining to our parents the manipulative actions Caroline had orchestrated since our childhood and beyond. In response to our mother's questions about why we did not come to them earlier, James insisted we did. You never believed us. His tone carried more sadness than anger, and I clarified that this was the reason why I left. My mother appeared on the verge of tears while father clenched his jaw in pure anger. Just then my phone rang and it was Oliver, so I excused myself and went to chat with him. He sounded sad but also weirdly happy. So, as it turns out, he's been struggling for a while with Caroline. You were right about her, she can't help it. It's pathological. She needs to control other people. It's got so bad that I had to get the kids out of there. So, I asked if she was drinking, and he said yes. She's been letting go from the bakery for showing up drunk a year before, and I was surprised to actually hear that. Oliver said Caroline had tried to force him to get her rehired. That was when things got really bad between them, and the drinking got worse, and she just stopped talking to him and the kids. One day, he looked at her credit card statement balance, and it was maxed out with Amazon purchases. Eventually, it got so bad that he just left. So, I told him I was really sorry and that I wished I could have helped in some way. He said that it's fine, his parents have been a big help. And he said, adding that he thought everything was going to be okay. Well, I grimaced. I had decided not to tell him about the fraud, and it sounded as though he had enough on his plate. Well, tell my nephew I said hi, is what I told him. Part of me was relieved that Caroline was finally hitting rock bottom. You can't go through life like that and expect everything always to go your way. You need to learn to cope with the fact that everyone has their own autonomy. Maybe there was hope for her, but for now, however, we need to protect Mom and Dad and deal with this fraud. We decided to not go to the police and handle this as a family. As far as we could tell, the false documents weren't the work of an actual lawyer. It seemed more likely Caroline had made them herself and was planning on pocketing the money. It was not a very thought-out plan, unless she was intending to run off to Mexico or something, which wasn't really her style. My dad could not fathom how Caroline thought that she would actually get away with this, claiming that he and Mom were dead. It was obvious that we would finally catch on to the hoax. I mean, come on. I told them Oliver had just called mentioning he was with Jake and Max at his parents' place, planning to stay there for a while. Well, Mom looked really surprised, and Caroline had not said anything about that. It did not surprise me. I told them, adding that Oliver mentioned that she's been drinking, running up debt, and lost her job at the bakery. Convincing my mom that Caroline was not the victim proved challenging. While she probably needs help, she had acted criminally. Despite that, my parents were still under her spell and wanted to give her a second chance. We decided to go talk to her, hoping that she could explain herself, though I doubt it. I tried to emphasize to my parents that there needs to be consequences to her actions, and she's getting away with stuff her entire life. We'll see if it really is understood in the morning, because we're going to drive back there together. Final update. We stopped at my place for lunch and then carried on to the suburbs where Caroline lives. Mom and Dad thought it would be better for them to talk to her alone, so I brought James home and then went into the office to do some work. Seeing my coworkers in real life, it felt really good. We'd been miniaturized versions of ourselves on Zoom for far too long. Later, I met my parents at their place, and James was there too. I asked them how it went, but I didn't really need to know. The answer was written right there on their faces. It turns out that Caroline flat out denied everything. She claimed that we were the ones who approached her with the idea. She said that there was no financial need on her end, pointing to the leased SUV in the driveway and the enormous empty house around her. She said, "That James was incredulous, and I was less shocked, and I said, of course, she's not going to own up to it. She's in total denial, man. Mom shook her head, and Dad just added that they'd given her every opportunity to come clean. But she's sticking with her story, huh? Okay. I asked my father if Caroline seemed like she's been drinking, and he said no, that she appeared sober. James asked if the next step was finally to go to the police. Well, Mom was pretty explicit about avoiding any unnecessary drama. She mentioned that Caroline provided them with documents and she claimed James and I had given her. She said that she would look them over and, go back and forth with her own lawyer to ensure the phony documents and would not cause any trouble in the future. Now, the will. As the will stood, Caroline was written in as the primary executor of the estate, encompassing the house, the 2 cars, and Dad's notable stock portfolio, which I actually had no idea about. Mom and Dad said they weren't entirely comfortable with Caroline overseeing everything, so, you know what? They're going to make a few adjustments. In the event of their passing, Caroline would receive a reduced share, and James and I would inherit the majority. It would be up to us to determine the terms of Caroline's portion. Mom also informed us that they would be helping Caroline with some cash immediately. We could, get to decide how she got it and what she spent it on, making sure James and I kept the reins on Caroline's financial assistance. This was music to my ears. Finally, Caroline would have to accept that she was not in control of everything and everyone. I asked if I could be the one to tell her, and my mom said, yeah, sure, it's okay, but be careful, because she did not think Caroline was in her right mind. So, I left my parents with James and I drove over there. The lights were off, but I could see the TV on. The door was open, so I walked in. Caroline was passed out on the sofa and there was a box of wine and the coffee table. I shook her awake. When I told her what was happening, she seemed confused. She wasn't drunk, having slept off the booze from before, then it clicked. She was getting left out. James and I were going to be in charge of her money. I watched the rage start to build up behind her eyes. For the next half hour, she screamed at me. She said that I was a liar, deceitful, and a selfish idiot. I just sat there because it doesn't matter. Caroline had run up against the wall, and she's gone all in on the last attempt to force us to do as she wished. It failed, as I told her it would. As she sat there on the sofa, looking at me and saying nothing, I genuinely hoped that she would get better. There are some good qualities to Caroline, and she taught me how to swim, how to ride a bike, and she is very protective. You're going to regret this. I doubt it. We have proof of her attempt at fraud, and she knew it. Should she try anything else, we're just going to go to the police. I left her there, telling her I'd check in on her tomorrow. It felt good to take the high road, although I still didn't know what she had planned to do with the money that she was scamming James and me to give her. But you know what? Now it doesn't really matter since I can assume a lot of things, and none of it matters. Guys, thank you for staying with me till the end. I just don't understand at all what today's story was supposed to solve. The sister, there's no way she thought that she would actually get away with this. We're talking about 2 people who are still plenty alive and well. You don't think that they're going to show their face in a day or a week when they get back from the cabin? How did she think this was even going to play out? Anyways, guys, we see karma came very strong in today's video, and the parents are like, you know what? Maybe we should not give her all the inheritance. Maybe we should give it to OP and OP's brother and let them handle it since they're obviously more well put together when it comes to money. Guys, let me know what you think about it, what you would have done, so drop it down below in the comment section. After my father's funeral, my stepmother convinced me to get out, basically. She told me there is a secret in the family that my dad didn't want to tell me because he didn't want to break my heart, but now that he's gone, she doesn't care about my feelings, so she's going to tell me. Well, it turns out I'm adopted. Yeah, I'm adopted. I never would have thought that. My father never told me, and we were like this close. But guys, I promise there's so much more to this story. Let's start from the beginning, and I'll walk you through every single step. My stepmother just dropped a bombshell on me before kicking me out, and now I don't really know what to do. Imagine finding out that your whole life is a lie. That's something I've only ever seen happen in movies, books, or maybe the occasional newspaper article. Things like that don't really happen to me. I have the most normal life possible. This is why I'm struggling to come to terms with what I've just found out. I don't know if I'm telling my story to strangers, hoping for advice or pity. All I know is that I need to tell someone. The only people who know what has just happened are my best friends and his grandmother. They've been kind enough to take me in, even though they're also struggling, you see. My best friend Brendan told me his grandmother did not hesitate to help me because of the way that my father has helped them over the years. The same father lied to me about who I was and then left me with nothing. The irony is so funny. Why would he do that to me? I get that his death was untimely, but at least I deserve the truth. Maybe he was planning on telling me the truth when I turned 18, but now it's too late. He's gone. My stepmother is the one who told me the truth about who I was, and then she kicked me to the curb. Like I was not even a person. Meg, my stepmother, and I have had our differences in the past. But as the years have gone by, we've been more cordial towards one another. I understand that my dad loved her, and she was going nowhere. Anyways, she understood that I was my father's oldest child, and he would never choose her over me. She had a child within a year of marrying my father, and her daughter is now 12 years old. I've always had a normal sibling relationship with my sister Kayla. Kayla was her mother's daughter, and I was my father's son. That was our family dynamic, or at least the gist of it, and we were living a normal life until the day my father died. My father, he had a massive heart attack at work, and he still looked young and healthy, but his heart had never been strong. He was on multiple chronic medications for many years, and unfortunately he collapsed one day, and he was gone within a minute. It was a couple of weeks into my senior year, and I had to be pulled out of class when that happened. If I had known it was my last day at the school, maybe I would have talked to the girl I liked for the last time. The funeral happened, and right after that, my father's will reading was conducted. Since we're minors, my stepmom did not allow me and my sister to be present. A couple of days after the will reading, she told us that we were moving out of town. She was going to put the house up for sale, and I've lived in this small town all my life. It did not make sense for her to just tell me that I had to leave. I confronted her about her unreasonable choice and begged her to reconsider. She told me that she was now my legal guardian, and what she said would happen, and if I did not want to do what she wanted me to, then I could just simply leave. I knew I could not just simply leave. My dad's side of the family all lived in that town. I could not handle the upheaval, and I was not that close with them. As for my mother's side of the family, she had absolutely no siblings, and her parents were dead. I know no one from her family, and my stepmom was the closest to a parent I was left with. I was 17, with no money, no plan. I was backed into a corner, and I had to reluctantly say goodbye in the short time that she gave me and then move on with her. So, we moved into an apartment in another city. She was never in the house, and she made me responsible for my sister. She had not enrolled me in school yet and kept on making excuse after excuse, and she told me that my father made a mess of his estate and life insurance, and she was trying to clean that up. Eventually, I gathered the courage to ask her about my inheritance. Well, at that point, she loses her temper and went to ask me if I was calling her a thief. She said that she was doing so much for me with her own money because Dad's assets were simply not released yet. She asked me to at least be gracious and patient, and, well, guys, I tried, but I had a very bad feeling about what she was up to. I'd never trusted her nor liked her, and she did not like me or owe me anything. Why would she have my best interest at heart? It turns out that I was right to be that weary of her. She had a lot that she's been keeping from me, but it was far from what I initially thought. I started becoming resentful of her because I had to stay at home all day, do nothing, and help my sister with homework. I also had to do all the house chores because Meg was never home. I started to get very frustrated, and soon I could not keep quiet anymore. I told her that she better get me back in school soon because she was being, well, a B word. She gets so angry and tells me that she had actually had enough of me. She did not see why she had to continue taking care of me when my father left me with nothing. The least I could have done was work for my stay by helping her around the house and Guys, since it was clear that I wanted to be the head of the house and control her, she felt it was best for me to leave. I was still stuck on the parts where she told me that my father left me nothing, and I told her that she's a liar and that she must have forged some sort of will. She told me that she was not that desperate and she knew the reason why he left me absolutely nothing but felt sorry for me to tell me. I told her to say whatever she wanted to say because at this point I was so sick and tired of her. She was doing absolutely nothing for me even though she was supposed to be my legal guardian. She rolls her eyes and then she just tore my whole world apart. She tells me that the reason he left nothing for me was because I was adopted. I wasn't his real son, so he didn't leave me anything. I asked, how could I be left nothing? She told me that the only thing he left me was a small amount to live on. He had left everything to his wife and biological daughter, and I could not believe what she was telling me. My father loved me. How could he keep such a thing from me? I mean, I was his son. I looked just like him, and she told me that the whole time she had actually been trying to get some information about my birth parents so she could send me back to them. All I could do was sit there and be silent. I couldn't believe it. She was lying to me, and I told her that she was a liar, and that she was trying to get money for herself. She gets angry and tells me that she was actually sick of my attitude, and she's been trying to help me, but I was clearly ungrateful. She refused to stay with somebody so disrespectful and felt that she did not need to prove anything to me. She told me that my father left me nothing because in the end I was worth nothing. He and his real family, which consisted of his wife and his daughter. And I get very angry, and oh boy, I said a few choice words. She made me so furious with her lies, and then she gets angry. And the next thing I knew, she was telling me to be gone by the morning or she would call the police on me. So that night, I hardly slept because I was trying to organize a place for me to stay. I took the little money that she gave me the next day and made my way back to town. I'm now staying with my best friend Brendan and his grandmother until I make a plan. Update number 1. This first update came out 6 months after the original post. Here it is. I did not think my post was going to get any comments or any support, but oh boy was I wrong. I managed to get some encouragement to finish school and make a life of my own. I decided to stop wallowing in self-pity and ask myself why my father did this to me. You know, I'll never know. All I know is that I'm alone and I'm responsible for my own survival. My friend sells some t-shirts and stuff that his grandma makes on the weekend, and I took some of the money I had and invested it in a small business. We now work together on the weekends to sell the stock, and since there are now 2 of us selling, we're able to bring in some good money for food and essentials. Brendan has been doing this for years to support himself and his grandmother. He plans to go to community college as soon as he's done with high school, and I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. Even before I lost my father, I did not want to go the mainstream route. My interests lie in design and art, and I've been looking at some affordable online programs from when I finished school. Hopefully we'll be able to make it through this year and make something of ourselves. I never knew how lucky I was till I got this position. Brendan always seemed normal, never tired or complaining about the situation. I helped him out the best that I could, but he was always very, very humble. Now that I'm in this position, I admire him for doing this for years. I've been working every weekend and I'm constantly exhausted and I just want to sleep as I'm writing this. But I still had to finish up my homework. We plan to take a day off on the weekend and just rest and study for some upcoming testing. Grandmother has been really helpful with the studies because she's a former math teacher. Now, I know why my best friend's always been insanely good at math. My life could have turned out way worse than it actually is right now, and I do have a roof over my head, I have food, and I'm living with some pretty good people. I could have been on the streets if that witch of a stepmother had her way, but thankfully I am not. I'm going to carry on doing this, working as hard as I can till I get where I want to be. I've learned that everything happens for a reason, no matter how much it can suck. There's no use in me sulking and being angry over circumstances that I cannot change. And wow, this is how it feels to be a grown-up, huh? My father would be so amused if he saw me now. I still call him my dad because that's who I've known him to be. No matter what Meg says about our relationship, he's my father. Update number 2. Guys, this one came out 2 years after the first post. Here it is, update 2, 2 years later. I can't believe that 2 long years have passed since I graduated high school. I have all but forgotten about this post in my past, and see, after high school, I've always looked forward. I left that small town and went to look for work in the big city. I followed the advice of one of the commenters. You see, they told me that if I'm in a small town, I must find a way to get out and get to bigger opportunities. Even though we know there's risk involved with that, I do think it's worth it. Brendan stayed and went to community college, and we're still in touch to this day. There was somebody in the comment section who told me that from the way that I described my altercation with my stepmom, I came off as disrespectful. The comment went on to say that if I had been nicer, maybe she would have given me the little information that she had about my real parents. Bold of you to assume that I want anything to do with my birth parents, isn't it? I mean, why should I? So that I can be disappointed again? The only family I have is that one that I choose. I've not spoken to anyone from my dad's side since the funeral, and I assumed that they would not reach out and have to deal with the aftermath of me finding out the truth. Since they did not reach out, I didn't either. That is, until I got the wedding invitation from my cousin Bryce. You see, I know of Bryce, I just don't know him. I'm only one picture of us, and it was taken when we were toddlers. He sent an email to me saying that he's been trying to reach me for a few months now, but to no avail. He found my old email ID and hoped that it was the right person. He attached our picture from oh so long ago, and he said that he was getting married, and his wife wanted to have a very big family, and her family was huge, and she wanted him to invite every bit of family members that he had. He said that he remembered a little bit about me from where we were young and made the random decision to contact me. He also revealed that my grandmother had not seen me in years and wanted me at the wedding. I've not responded for days as I've thought about it, but whether I wanted to open that can of worms yet. After thinking it over long and hard, I realized that maybe she had answers for me about my dad. She was his mom after all, and she had to know that I was adopted. I spoke to my girlfriend about it, and she thought that it was a wonderful idea. I think she just loved that I was allowed to bring a +1, and she never really has been to my hometown. I could also not use work as an excuse because I now work as a remote graphic designer. I studied while I worked, and I put all my effort into it. I started to have a few clients until one of them decided to hire me permanently. Now I had a well-paying job, a girlfriend, and a small circle of friends. I was not quite sure where I wanted to be yet, and there was so much that I still wanted to do, but so far I was content. So I tell my dear Gemma that I did not even know my cousin that well, and besides, I was not related to him by blood. I had simply come to terms with the fact that the father I grew up knowing was actually not my real dad. She told me that it didn't matter. It was a chance to get out of the city and get some fresh air. She felt deserving of it after how hard I've been working in the past year, and I could not relax. I'd gotten so used to having such little time to do things and working on a strict schedule. Going to a wedding, which is in 2 weeks, is not on the schedule, but Gemma was adamant that it would do me good. She said that if I did it, then I would not have to do date night for 2 weeks when we come back. Well, I do enjoy her date nights, but I hated going out and socializing, and I'm the complete opposite of her when it comes to interacting with people. But I guess, it comes in handy. She socializes for both of us, and I have enough calming energy for us, and I trusted her to know what was best for me, so I reluctantly agreed. So in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to see my father's side of the family, and I wonder what they're going to have to say for themselves after the way that they neglected me after the funeral. Not a call for help or anything like that, and not even a text came through. Now, I'm going to get my answers, and I'm not sure if I even want them, to be honest. But it's been 2 years, and I need to put this part of my life to rest so that I can carry on. I'm determined to build a future for myself that's not affected by my past. My stepmother might have told me that I would amount to nothing when she kicked me out, but I'm going to prove her wrong. Well, I have to go now, guys. Gemma already wants to start packing before I can even RSVP. It goes without saying that I'm going to tell you everything that happens there. Update number 3. 3 weeks later. Hey guys, well, I'm back in town. And I'm even more confused than ever before. All that I've believed with very strong conviction over the past 2 years seems to not be it. I was right when I thought that there was something fishy going on with my stepmom. She covered her tracks well and probably did not think that I would stumble upon the truth. Life works in very weird ways. I'm very thankful to Gemma for pressuring me to come to my hometown. When I arrived for the wedding, my cousin picked me up and took me to Grandma's house. She was more than happy to host me and my girlfriend, and when I saw her, I did not know how to feel. She tried to be friendly, but I could not find it in my heart to return her warmth. The only thing going through my head was that she was just being nice to me simply out of pity. On the other hand, Grandma and Gemma got along like a house was on fire. Nobody could separate them from each other, and the only thing I knew of each other for less than a week, but they were always together. This is how Gemma ended up letting slip something. I'd forgotten to tell her not to talk about my adoption. It was a touchy subject that I was still gathering the courage to speak about. So imagine my surprise when one day, Grandmother cornered me and told me that we need to have a serious talk. I had no choice but to agree, and we finally had the dreaded talk. She told me that I should have hold on to Gemma because that girl really cares about me, you know. She said that she cared enough to confront my grandmother about my adoption, and I tried to explain and tell her that I was sorry that she got ambushed. Instead, she starts to laugh, which confused me. I asked why in the world is she laughing, and she asked me who told me that I was adopted. So I told her the whole story about how I was adopted and how my father left me nothing, and she then said that it made sense why my stepmother refused to take calls from her now. She's been trying to reach us for years, but stepmother ignored it. It was thanks to Bryce that she ended up finding me. She said she was getting old and wanted to see me before she passed, and she said that she was sorry that I had to go 2 years questioning my dad's love for me when there was no need. After telling me that, she took my hands in hers and told me that we were related. My father never adopted me. It was all a sick lie by stepmother so she could drive me out of her life and sink her fangs into my father's estate. Well, I was shocked. I was mad. She played me for my money? I should have never trusted her, and guys, the wedding, it went well. Before I left, Grandmother told me she had a feeling my father left me quite a lot of money. And stepmother was hiding it. She told me to look into what happened 2 years ago, and she had a feeling there was way more than meets the eye. Well, what an interesting trip, am I right? Update number 4. 1 month later. I'm so glad that I found out the truth, but it was late. That meant my stepmom forgot about me, and she carried on living her life, thinking that she had gotten away with dumping me out of my legacy. She never saw me coming as I investigated every single aspect of her life. It's funny how much you could find out about a person if you really put yourself up to it. Well, with my girlfriend's help, I was able to find out some very incriminating things about my stepmother. Gemma is an amazing investigator. She found out things about my stepmom that I was shocked about. That reminded me to never cross her, and I was going to make sure that Meg rued the day she decided to steal from me. I'll not tell you every single thing I found out about her, but I'll tell you what is relevant, right? 2 years ago, when she moved us away, it was because she had lied that she was taking me to an expensive boarding school. She then kicked me out so that there was no way I could come back and claim what was mine. She forged some acceptance letters, which she gave to the lawyer, and since I was a minor and under her care, no one looked too carefully at it. My girlfriend was somehow able to get this information after I failed, and after finding this out, I looked into her financial activities over the past couple of months. She has been unable to sell the house for the price that she wanted, and so now she was running an Airbnb out of it. This was good news for me because it meant that I could still get the house back if everything went according to plan. When I looked through her social media, I saw that her quality of life had greatly improved since the last time that I saw her. She was constantly going on trips, shopping, and spoiling her daughter. Even though my father had provided her with a good life when they were married, I'd have to say this was very extra. She was just busy eating away at what was meant for me, and it made me angry. The rage that I feel every day when I wake up threatens to consume me, guys. I want her to be on her knees, begging to help when I'm done with her. She's going to cry and wish for mercy when I get my revenge. She doesn't see this coming. She smiles and laughs as if all of this is borrowed time. She is on borrowed time, and I'm going to bring that law down upon her and take everything. I'm sure that this is what my father would have wanted. Finally, he's going to be able to rest in peace. I hope this goes well and that the law is on my side, seeing it's been 2 years now since it all happened. Update number 5, 3 months later. I finally did it. And I took my stepmother to court for stealing my inheritance, and you should have heard the way she freaked out when she got served her court summoning. She was losing it, telling me that I had it all wrong. She still tried to convince me that I was adopted and I had no right to my father's estate, and she even went as far as to tell me that if, I wanted, she would tell me who my real parents were. I told her not to bother because my grandmother already told me everything that was not known. I told her that I could not believe that she was so disgustingly greedy. I was not going to have mercy on her. The least she could do was confess, and she laughed and said good luck. And I was never going to get anything. She had no idea how much I managed to dig up on her, which made it so much fun. I hung up on her while she was still speaking and told her that I was going to see her in court. As expected, she started to harass me, trying to find a way to straight up intimidate me and to get me to drop the case. Obviously, it did not work because I was no longer that scared little boy who had just lost his father. I was now a young man who wanted to see justice being served and who would not fall for her lies. She then got the brilliant idea of trying to contact my girlfriend and feeding her lies about me. She told Gemma to be careful with me because I had a very violent past. This was my first time hearing about my so-called violent rage. I sent her a message ASAP as soon as my girlfriend told me what had been said. I told her that if she wanted to add defamation of character to the list of charges against her, then she should just say so. Otherwise, it would do her good to stay away from my girlfriend and everyone else in my life. I had information about her that would have her own daughter despise her if she wanted to try me. She did not try to contact Meg again after that, and I was very stern when I warned her, and even gave her a hint about what I knew. Since then, the only interaction I've had with her is in court. This case, guys, has honestly been dragging on, and I just want it to end. There are so many technicalities, and she's fighting me as hard as she can, and despite all of that, I'm equipped to fight her to the end and get what I want. She's not going to walk away with what was meant for me. All the lies that she's telling about me in court are not even credible, and that is the only real evidence that she has. She must just wait. When I'm done with her, she will not be so smug. Final update, update number 6, 2 months later. What did I tell you? She was not going to be so smug by the end of the court case and ended up regretting how it all dragged out. It revealed some things about her that she wanted no one to know. Basically, she's gotten married before and tried to get money out of the men, and sometimes she succeeded and sometimes she simply did not. She had a child with one of them, and when she failed to get alimony, she abandoned that poor child with her father or the child care and would not see her kid afterward. You can imagine how my sister felt after what happened. She called and said that she was now staying with her aunt, and she was very mad at her mom for all the lies that was told all those years. Apparently, she's been bad-mouthing me for years and claiming that I abandoned them. At least now she knows the truth, and we're back on speaking terms. As for the court case, I won, and I got everything she owed me, along with some money for the emotional distress that she caused me. Since she had also committed fraud and forgery, she got 2 years in jail, but could get out sooner on good behavior. Yeah, knowing her, she'll get caught up in something that she is not supposed to and stay longer. As for me, I'm just happy that I have my father's house back. Even though it does not look the same anymore, she completely redecorated everything and got rid of every single memory of him. Gemma wants to help me redecorate it, and honestly, I don't mind. She's a wifey, to be honest, and as some of the people in the comments said, I should not wait much longer to propose. What do you guys think?